for Corporate Governance and your host for this event. I'm honored to have you join us today, both in person and online. On behalf of the Board of the Directors of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria, I would like to welcome our special guest to this event. Also, our keynote speaker, I would like to welcome you, ma'am. The distinguished panelists, thank you for joining. We have them both virtually and here in person. Thank you so much for joining us. The members of our society present here, thank you so much for coming. I can see one of my board members, so I'm excited to see her in person. So thank you so much for coming. This is all our attendees. Thank you so much for attending this second edition of our International Women's Day Roundtable with the focus on board-ready female, modeling ethical leadership, and driving transformation. The Society for Corporate Governance is excited to have set aside today to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, political, and personal achievements of women in commemoration with the International Women's Day celebration. With the theme for this year, Embrace Equity. Celebrated on 8th March every year, the significance of the International Women's Day is increasing year after year and has become a custom, as we can see in several events. I must emphasize that several events celebrating this day. And I trust that our own society and this roundtable will also be a significant and an impactful event. It's also celebrated globally, really. So it's not about Nigeria, but it's also celebrated globally. Today, women have gotten equal potential, provided they are being trusted and valued. Today's women have realized their strength and abilities to step out to contribute to the society and the world at large. It's indeed remarkable to see women being rewarded and recognized in our society today. Last year, the Society for Corporate Governance hosted the maiden edition of this event with the theme Boardroom Readiness, Enlightening and Equipping Women. In line with our belief that promoting board-ready females is not just a matter of diversity or inclusion, it is a matter of business successes and sustainability. By embracing these principles, we can build a more resilient and prosperous future for our organization, our stakeholders, and the society at large. It is this in mind that the Society for Corporate Governance is hosting this meeting and the conversation. Today's discussion, we will speak extensively on gender diversity, equity, transformation, and the need for quick transformation in the corporate world. I will let our speakers do justice to that. I would like you to bear in mind that the power of a woman is immeasurable and cannot be expressed through these few words of mine. The sooner we embrace equity, the sooner the intended transformation we all desire. Let's embrace equity together. And I would like to welcome you again to this event. And I would like also everybody online to please be involved in our Q&A session. We have our technical crew ready to take your questions. So without wasting so much of our time, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's event. Bella, if you're ready, the mic is yours. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us today and for joining on time. Good morning to those of us joining online. Thank you so much. Please let us know if you have any issues in the chat, and the technical team will resolve your issues as speedily as they can. My name is Bella Ikeme, and I'll be moderating today, and I'm so excited about the conversation we'll be having today, and I implore all of us to please be very active, as well as just be open-minded about the conversation we're going to be having today. I'm calling on now Professor Enase Okonedo, the keynote speaker. She's the Vice Chancellor of Pan-Atlantic University. Prior to this, she was Dean of the Lagos Business School from July 2009 until December 2020. She is a seasoned educator, and she sits on several boards, is a professor of management and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, the Institute of Directors, the Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria, as well as the International Academy of Management. She is an active public speaker and has presented at numerous conferences globally on issues of management education in emerging markets. She is also widely published in academic journals and is the author of 2 books, The Determinants of Stock Buying Behavior of the Individual Investor in the Nigerian Equity Markets, and The Art of Decision Making, a Guide to Executive Decision Making in Africa. Professor Konedo, please come up.
Thank you very much, Bella. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. At least when Choma was speaking, she welcomed us to the conversation. So I'm hoping that it will be a conversation after my keynote address and the guest speaker has spoken. I'm hoping that we will be engaged. I would like to begin, first of all, for thanking the Society of Corporate Governance of Nigeria for inviting me to come and share my thoughts. When my profile was being read, I think what must have come across was me as an academic. However, in addition to being an academic, I have also had one leg in practice over the past many years. And I have sat on different boards, just to set the context, not to praise myself more, but I've sat on boards in both publicly quoted companies, private companies, not-for-profits, small businesses, a whole plethora of different things. And that has given me an insight into what it is that boards are looking for in the first instance. And the second is what we as females bring to the board. But let me first of all begin by celebrating all of us that are gathered here today, those of us that are here in the room and those of us that are online. It's International Women's Day. I'm glad that the men have started to copy us. And now they're doing International Men's Day. But even then, it was a chance for us to celebrate ourselves. You know, I always remember things fall apart. And I don't know how many of us read that when we went to secondary school. But remember that there was one short story about if the lizard falls from the top and nobody praises him, he will praise himself and he will. Yes, so we started by praising ourselves. And now people are joining us, you know, to praise ourselves, to acknowledge the contributions that we bring to society, and especially to enterprises and to organizations. And for all the men that join in celebrating us and support us in that journey, I would like to say thank you, especially to our guest speaker here today. When I came in, I said, well, it wasn't hard to recognize you being the only gentleman in the room. And I applauded him for his courage, for being so bold as to come in the midst of women to come and share his thoughts on this. The theme of this year's International Women's Day event is Embrace Equity. And I think that we should spend maybe just a minute or two just understanding what equity is and how it is different from equality. Because when we first started to pursue seats on boards, and when we first started to ask questions about why more women didn't sit on boards, one of the first things that organizations started to say was that, you know what, we're equal opportunities, you know, even as employers, and, you know, equal opportunities is not the same as equity. Because equality means that, you know what, it's open to everybody, whether you're male or female. But equity means that we recognize that for some of us, to make the field level, the playing field level, some of us need some support in order to do that. And this is where it is that we've now started to speak about equity, because really it's recognizing that women bring something, but that the field is not always level. And therefore, if we want to make the playing field equitable, there's just something that we need to give, recognizing the role that women play, and, you know, especially in societies as ours. And it is true because in societies like ours, we still play the role of primary caregiver. We still make the buying decisions in households. There's still so many things that we do, and primarily we hold the family together. And therefore, as we celebrate the International Women's Day, we need to perhaps give some thoughts to the role that we play in promoting equity, not only in our workplaces, but also in our families and also in society, because we do have a responsibility to pay it forward. Not many of us have had the privilege or perhaps the opportunities to work in organizations in which, they're equitable and everybody, can aspire to high office. And sometimes even in our communities or indeed in our families there, perhaps the role of the woman is still being relegated to second class. And therefore, we have a responsibility not only to educate, but to look at what it is that we can do. Today's topic is about the board-ready female, modeling ethical leadership and driving transformation. I think that for all of us, we do know that the board is the most influential decision-making entity in an organization because the responsibilities of being a board member cover everything. Financial, legal, reputational, risk management, all of the above. And therefore, because it is the most influential decision-making unit, the boards are usually very careful as to who they let in there. Now, in the past, when we talked about, I've been fortunate to chair governance and nominations committees on a number of boards, and right now I chair for 2 boards. Now, in the past, when we used to look at the skills that are required, first of all, we started off by looking at board compositions. And then we started to think about, we need to make the board diverse. But we can look at diversity across a range of variables, if I may. You can look at diversity in terms of the skills that people bring onto the board. You can look at diversity in terms of gender. You can look at diversity in terms of age. You can look at diversity in terms of race. How do you balance all of those? And, at first, the focus, I must say, was on looking at diversity in terms of skills. And therefore, when we were looking at what skill, who to bring onto the board and how the board is composed, we were saying, does this person have financial? Does the person have legal? Does the person have all of those? And that's what it was that was the consideration. And then after a while, we started to speak about gender. But for a number of organizations, it was perhaps in some instances, it was with a real desire to say, recognizing that the female gender does have something different to contribute to the board. But for others, it was a question of perhaps if you played in the financial services sector, it was a question of regulation asked that, prescribed that you must have. For others, everybody is doing women, let me just find one and let me tick the box. And then, they started doing that. But, I always say to people, forget about, how you get on the board. If you do manage to get on the board, whether it was a gesture of tokenism, whether it was to tick the box or so, when you get to the board, you need to prove that you're worth your onions, that seat that has been given to you, you're worth having that seat. And, like I say to people, you can't be on the table if you're not on the menu. And therefore, having women on the board means that we put forward things that hitherto research has proven were not being considered across things. Several years ago, I was speaking to the CEO of one of the largest, if not the largest, fast-moving consumer goods company here in Nigeria, quite a few years ago. And he was talking about, I asked why there were only 2 females on a board of 11. And he said, you know what? For many years, we didn't think, it just didn't occur to us that it was necessary. For me, it was a no-brainer. If we think about who makes the decisions about the purchase of household products in the house, it's the females. These people are making all the products that we use, in our kitchen, in our bathrooms, for our personal care. The females are the ones that make beyond 70% of the purchasing decision, and yet no female sat on the board. And I said, what are you people thinking? So how do you create the products? You create what's good for you, and then you come and you use marketing to push it across. But it just shows you that it wasn't in the consciousness. And then, after a while, they started to look at that. But then research has consistently shown that, having females, having gender diverse boards does have, advantages, and is positively correlated with a number of things. And I'll just perhaps mention a few of those things. Now, again, let's make the difference between correlation and causation. Causation means that, being there is what has caused this to happen. That hasn't been proven. But there is a strong correlation across numerous studies that have been done that shows that, you know what, having women on the board is correlated with a number of things that we see, and those have been extensively researched and proven. And for anybody, just go and do Google search and say, you know what do women bring to the board? You will find, you know, a plethora of things. But I'll mention just a few of those things. And the first is that, you know, for people, I think the business case from all the research that has been done and disseminated, the business case is made for having women on the board. So we've gone beyond, really, is there a business case for having women on the board? Now, even if the men are not persuaded about the business case, we can actually point to specific things that the research has shown that they bring to the board. The second is that maybe we should look at the board as, you know, part of the talent. When we look at organizations, we think about, you know what, our talent pool. How do we get them? How do we retain them? And then how do we ensure that the way in which we manage them, they're being productive and contribute to the overall returns and, if you like, productivity of the organization. Now, even if we're not persuaded by the business case, and I know that I'm speaking to the choir here because everyone who's sitting in this room is a woman, therefore you must be persuaded about, well, apart from Mr. Nuzo and Mr. Orolubagwe, who has just joined us. You're welcome. We're happy to have two men in the room that are participating in this conference today. So we can look at it in terms of the talent. What talents do women bring to the board? And it's interesting that with talent companies, I decided I would look at it to say, what do recruiting and talent companies have to say about gender diversity? And what it is, the research that has been done is that, you know what, it has been proven that the HR policies and practices that focus on gender diversity, they're linked to lower levels of employee turnover. In other words, if you focus on the fact that, you know what, we need to have a diverse pool, we need to have males, we need to have females, for some reason, people stay more in those organizations. Well, we will have to do the research now that people are jackpotting to know whether or not, you know, this jackpot syndrome, the people who are leaving are those that are really in organizations in which they may not have gender or, well, strong diversity climates, if I may. The second that I would like to point out, I'm just pointing out a few, it's not an exhaustive list by any means, is about innovation and group performance. Because really, when organizations establish inclusive business cultures and policies, where they're reported to increase creativity, innovation, and openness, as well as increased assessment of consumer interest and demand. So, you know, maybe the one about consumer interest and demand, the example that I gave about the FMCG may come in, because then there's better clarity as to what it is that women are seeking. Of course, those can always be done by market surveys and things like that. But nevertheless, having a voice at the table, you know. But it has been proven that when the management teams are diverse, they're more innovative because diversity reduces groupthink. And here I want to pause for a moment to speak about if we do get a seat on the board and how we behave when we get to the board. Now, because most times we're coming into an environment that is male-dominated, sometimes when we get to positions of authority or when we get to the board, we feel that we need to behave like men. And therefore, you know, they say, oh, you know, men are more assertive. When is a woman, they will say she's aggressive. Oh, men are more confident. They can speak about their exploits, you know, or, you know, unlike women that are a bit more reticent. Oh, men are more, you know, all those things. Therefore, we feel that we sort of in our minds, perhaps in our subconscious, we equate those traits with what it is that board members want. And therefore, when we get onto the boards, we feel that we have to behave like that. Guess what? If you're being brought to a board because you're a woman, it's not that you should come and think and act like those people. You're being brought for diversity because there's a recognition that you bring different skills and different attributes. So therefore, when you go there and you behave like the people that are there, it's equivalent to not having a woman. Yes, you appear to be a woman, but in your behavior and in your think, you may be falling into groupthink. And therefore, I ask us to embrace our femininity. I like being a woman. I like the attributes that I bring to the board. I like that it is different from the males. I'm not going to go there and act as if I'm a male. I am not a male. I am more empathetic, which is not to say that some males are not empathetic, eh? But they're more attuned to a number of things. So let's not make this, because you see, one of the things about diversity is that you're trying to avoid groupthink. And groupthink does not aid enhanced decision making if everybody thinks the same, looks the same, behaves the same. So, and that's what happens with homogeneous groups. But the teams that include different viewpoints or thinking styles, they solve problems faster, and then they produce more and higher quality intellectual property, such as patents, because you always have people that think differently from the rest. And therefore, when we're constituting our teams as well, we need to think about that. Most times we just think, no, I don't want this troublemaker. This one is, maybe that troublemaker is the one you need on that board to play the devil's advocate, to go there and disrupt things, mix things up and shake things up a bit, because then it forces you to think differently and know whether there's merit in what it is that has been said. It's also been proven that inclusion, it boosts company reputation. When I read that, and I read several research that had been done that proved that, I think I was a bit chuffed. That just having women on the board, it just improves the reputation. So just by being there, well, you must say something, but just by being there, the company is better off. Maybe that's the reason why some of them, just ask us to come, just to tick things. But it goes beyond that. It has been proven that consumers are more likely to purchase or consider purchasing a product after viewing an advertisement that's perceived to be diverse or inclusive. Only recently, because it's election season, only recently I was at a small gathering in which somebody was speaking about, there have been various interactions, various fora in which we've had all the presidential candidates come and discuss and so on. So I was at one such, and somebody was commending what had happened. Of course, in the run-up to the elections, the presidential candidates had been invited to go to the United States of America, meet with the Secretary of State, and discuss. So I was speaking with one of the people that was there, one of the diplomats. And he said, so I said, what was the overall impression, of the respective, they came at different times, of the respective candidates. And he said, well, it was quite telling, only just by observation. He said, so-and-so one candidate came, he had a team of 5. Of the team of 5, there were 3 that were women. And then another candidate came, there were 17, all men. He said that alone was telling, just having all men, 17, all men. And therefore, he didn't say so, but it appeared to me that perhaps something was diminished in his assessment of such a candidate. And it's the same, that when companies have women on the bus, their reputation is enhanced because it is seen to be inclusive. And when adverts are inclusive, it shows that, this person recognizes that there are differences and it enhances that. It's also been proven that organizations with inclusive business cultures and practices are more likely to improve their reputations. Some of us may know about Great Place to Work. Well, there's several, things that, just sort of assess, the company. Most times organizations will do Net Promoter Score. They're trying to see how engaged are the employees. Will they recommend this place for somebody to come and work? Will they not? And the ones that have more females are more likely to recognize that because it's seen to be, to recommend to people to come and work there. They're seen to be inclusive. And then finally, this isn't what the research said, but when I read it, I made a note to myself saying, no surprise, mixed gender boards have fewer instances of fraud. I think we're more honest. Or we have more integrity, or we're perceived to have more integrity. Well, I don't know, but this is what it says, that they have fewer incidences of fraud. And adding women to the board can improve not only investment efficiency, but prevent risky overinvestment decisions. Maybe because we're more cautious. So we tend to say to people, apply the brakes. Whereas I think by their nature, but when Mr. Onuzo speaks, we will know whether it's true that men are more prone to take risks, whereas women are, of course, it's a stereotype, and with stereotypes, they're bound, they're generalizations, they're bound to be exceptions. But really, we're the ones that are more fast to apply, caution, risk, and then get people to think a bit more recently. And somehow or the other, we moderate the overconfidence of male CEOs. Because it is a fact that males are overconfident and they display this overconfidence. So really having females on the board, it does that. The second is that there's increased engagement among board members. And I don't know whether for those of us that sit on boards, you have observed this. But sometimes you go and you sit on boards and you're not given the opportunity to contribute. Or somehow or the other, maybe it's an unconscious bias, but somehow. I remember one of the boards that I joined a few years ago, it changed. But when I first joined the board, we were 13 on the board. 9 were white men, 2 were black men, 1 was a Nigerian, and then I was the female. Now, we will start a conversation at table, and then we will take a break, maybe a comfort break or something, and then they would go. And then when we come back, they will continue the conversation from after, not from where we stopped. And at first I was wondering, but we haven't concluded this. Oh, no, we continued the discussion as we went out there. They were so used to doing things that even when they went to the gentleman's room, they continued the conversation, they go to the bar, they continued the conversation. I was a woman that knew I had something to contribute, and unconsciously, it was not at all, I don't think it was at all deliberate on their part. My view was not being taken into consideration in all instances, because some decisions didn't get made at the table, but continued in the social gatherings. And therefore, it was, first of all, I pointed it out to say, you know what, hey guys, I don't know how you will have been doing before, but here, when we're making decisions, we make them at the table. That's number one. The second was that I tried to join myself, short of following them to the gentleman's room, which I couldn't. But I will follow them to the bar, because afterwards they want to have a drink, they want to relax afterwards, and it's true, go there, I may not drink the whiskey, but I will have a soda, I will, socialize with them, because right after the meeting, they continue the conversation, and then after that, they go on to football or whatever things interest men. But at that place afterwards, I will stay back. We women are always in a hurry. We need to go to the family, the children are waiting, we need to make the dinner, we need to do that, and we miss out on another role, which is that we should be functioning board members as well. So, regardless of how we come, we need to foster that engagement and see. But then I'll speak about that later on. And then more importantly, one of the key attributes that in recent years, gender diversity on the boardroom is being seen to contribute to is the strengthening of environmental, social, and governance performance. Maybe it's because, the research says that women directors are more likely than men to identify social issues, okay? Things like human rights, things like climate change, things like income inequality. Maybe because the men have never felt discriminated against in terms of income inequality. It's not something that's usually in their consciousness. But when you have women on the board, these are the things that they recognize. And therefore, more prone to suggest more progressive organizational management practices. But despite these proven benefits, this business case that has been made, women are still underrepresented, and the progress is slow. Globally, as at 2021, I haven't seen the figures for 2022 yet, but as at 2021, women representation on the top quoted publicly companies was 19.7% of all board seats. And I decided to look at Nigeria, and there's a body, PWR advisory group, that did the research. They started in 2020, and then they did in 2021. And then when they did the research, according to their research, for the same 2021, women held 23.4% of board seats. My first reaction was, yay, Nigeria, we're exceeding the global, average, on one. But then the deeper dive suggests that majority of those board seats on the quoted companies are seats on the boards of financial services. And maybe it's because the regulator, the central bank, has prescribed a certain minimum that boards must have. It's 30%. There are 2 banks that are above the 30%, but many banks are still yet not at that level, and the majority are below. So we're not doing badly. But however, can more be done? And I'd like to speak about how more can be done, because when we talk about equity and embracing equity, remember what we said, is about ensuring that people, they're supported, they're enhanced, to be able to come to the table and then have that level playing field. It's not by saying everyone can come. What are we doing? And I think that the responsibility will cut across 3 different groups. First of all, in regulated industry, with policies, and by regulators in one instance. The second is by the organizations themselves, and then the third is by we ourselves. What are we going to do? So in Nigeria, there's 3 bodies that speak about, regulators that speak about, gender diversity. So the Central Bank of Nigeria, in its act, it's prescriptive. It says 30% of the board must be members. And then we have the Securities and Exchange Commissions, and then the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance. But for the latter two, there's no prescription. It's more a suggestion or an advisory to say, you know what, when you are composing your boards, take into consideration, you know, the fact of having gender diverse boards. But outside of banking, there are very many other regulated industries in Nigeria. Why is it that they have not regulated? So if we look at, for instance, oil and gas, how many organizations of oil in the oil and gas sector have up to 30% representation on their boards? Very few. Several have none. I was interviewed 3 years ago, actually, by an organization in the oil and gas sector. They were looking for an independent director. I looked at everything. They had sent everything. I went to speak with them. It was during the time of COVID, so it was online. And there were 17 directors, all male. So I asked them, please, why are people looking for female? They talked here, they talked there. It was not the contribution. I think it was one of those ones of tick the box. And then I started to ask questions about, you know what, how do you welcome the views of others? How do you do this? In fact, in half an hour, I had made up my mind that these ones were not ready yet, because it was a pretty homogeneous group. In that particular organization, 15 of them had their roots in a particular oil major. So that was where they had come from. And then, of course, there were 17 all male. I just thought, you know what, this is a wolf going into the lion's den. Eh? When you have arranged yourself and you have more women, you can call me somebody who's, and it's not for lack of courage. It is just that when you get a seat on the board, you must be thinking about the value that you bring and also the practices that will allow you to contribute to what it is that you're doing. And if you see that there's a very strong culture that brokers no outside view or no opposing view, all of them have been thinking the same, you may take it as a challenge. On the other hand, I just think, you know what, do I need this headache? I beg. You know, when you arrange yourselves, you know, you can come. So we can look at what are we doing to drive policy. And I think that bodies such as the Society of Corporate Governance, the Institute of Directors, and other governance bodies should take it up as a challenge to say, you know what, forget about banking. It's already there. With the other regulated ones, what are we going to do? How are we going to ensure that this is on the agenda and that, you know, they come on the board? And women are welcome onto the board. Now, with companies themselves, what can be done? And I'll use the example. I mentioned to you that I chaired governance and nominations. And of course, there's always a female agenda. For organizations, the first is for us to look at the policies. Are we specific? You know, the policies are not couched usually in any gender specific. It doesn't say men are welcome or women are welcome. It just says we will look for this. But if we want to embrace equity, we should specify women. We should specify the targets for women because we're trying to make that playing field level. And therefore, the first thing is to do an audit of the policies. Let's look at the board charter. Let's look at what it is that they say about board composition, and then what does it say? And therefore, we need to ensure that we specify that. That's the only way it can happen. But then it goes beyond setting it. We need to set targets. And say, you know what, it's not just to say women are welcome on the board or something that's couched in a general term, which is if we see, if we don't see. No, it is that we will aim to have X representation, and on the two boards that I currently chair nominations, I have, we have agreed to say 40%, and it's something we measure. To say 40% is our target. One is, so there's several. So when people bring recommendations, I'm looking, okay, where are the female candidates? Sometimes they tell me, this country, there was war. All the females, when the men were killed, they stayed at home, they went to, I said, that's even more of a reason for you to have females that have assumed positions of leadership and therefore are prepared to come and lead on the board. Don't give me that reason. Or it is a small pool and things. But of course, it goes beyond that. And I'll speak to that in a minute. Because for the companies to set the targets and actually aim to fill those targets, we must be board ready. And I think that, this is what it is that the conversation today will be about. How do we prepare ourselves to be board ready? So that it will not be that they did not see. It is that there are plenty that are ready. It's a question of choice, not that we cannot find any. So the organizations have to define clearly the policies, have to set targets. But it goes beyond setting targets, just as we measure financial performance. When we are doing any review, every quarter we're looking at the board results. What is our profit? What is our return on equity? We should also be looking, of course, we can't do that quarterly because the board seats don't become available that often. But at least annually, we should be looking at the composition. This is the target we set for ourselves. When recommendations are made to fill board positions, we must look at, what moves did you get to ensure that we have a diverse pool of both male and female? And then we can progress these things by the work practices that encourage female leadership in order that we have board-ready females. There's still several organizations in Nigeria that do not encourage, that have work practices that actually discourage females from participating in and contributing to the organizations. So what are the practices, and perhaps you can think of your own organizations, what are the practices that you have to support women at different stages in their lives when they go and have children? It goes beyond maternity leave. Everybody gives maternity leave. But there's some organizations that they come, young people, they get employed. They tell me that, I can't get pregnant for, 2 years because they won't confirm me. In fact, in one of, my jobs at some point in time, we were doing the performance evaluation of the people, and we're looking at particular departments, and somebody that I thought was a high performer, I wondered, this person, she's not eligible for evaluation this year. I said, why? Said, because she went on maternity leave. I said, how long was the maternity leave? They said 3 months. I said, this person worked for 9 months in a year. She exceeded and broke all the targets that were set. She went for maternity leave for 3 months. You are saying that she's not eligible. Why? Of course, that particular board, I was the only female, it was not a large board, maybe 5 or 6 people at the board. Do you know that all the males were very surprised? The first answer from the HR person that was presenting was that, well, that's the rule, madam. I said, which rule? Who made the rule? And why did they make the rule? You know how sometimes we meet organizational practices, we just accept them, that's the way it is. We don't give thought to, why did they, of course, it must be a man that made that rule at some point in time. Due apologies to the 2 gentlemen in the room. But even then, I cannot think that a female will say, this. But even then, I myself have also been, many years ago, have also fallen into that trap of unconscious bias. About maybe 25 years ago, I was part of an interview panel in which, we were interviewed a PA, a personal assistant to the CEO of the organization where I worked. And we interviewed somebody was very good, but she came for the interview pregnant. I had worked, my background before I came to the business school was in financial services sector, and of course we had those type of rules. In fact, by the time you go on maternity leave for 3 years, you are frozen, just forget it. In fact, by the 4th year, they'll tell you to take break first of all, go and decide whether you want to be a mother, you want to be a banker. Then when you come back, you are frozen. So anyway, so I was coming from that. And then we interviewed people for a personal assistant role. And one of them was pregnant. And then the 3 of us interviewers, we put our scores afterwards. Dr. Christopher Kolade was part of that panel because he used to work at the business school. And when we finished, they asked, what is your recommendation? And I recommended not the one that was pregnant. And then afterwards, you discuss why you put this one, why. And then they asked, but this person, why? I said she's pregnant. And Dr. Kolade said, And so what does that have to do with her ability to do the job? And it was the first time I stopped to say, yes, but why? I, a woman. But because of where I was coming from and my conditioning, I just felt that pregnancy was something that eliminated someone from a job, regardless of the skills, superior skills that she may bring to that. So again, we need to look at our organizational practices, what we have met, and what are we doing to change those things, So with organizations, of course, the responsibility is there for us to set targets, for us to measure, and to progress these work practices. In fact, by the time the men in Lagos Business School at some point in time said, women, you give them 4 months maternity leave, they come, they do this, they struggled. So we now added paternity leave for them, but not so long. We give them like 1 week or so, or 2 weeks to say, okay, people can take paternity leave, but it's still skewed in favor of the women. So women contribute, as I've said, in several different ways. So we've spoken about, what we can do on the policy level, what we can do on the organizational level, which is we must be deliberate about, taking a look at those policies, what targets have been set, and then what are our work practices and what are we doing to foster this. I've just given a few examples, but then examples abound because different people, as part of the diversity, we can't only have people who have chosen to be single working in the organization, or people who are past their childbearing age, or people who are not yet about. We can't. A part of diversity and equity is that everybody is welcome to the table. But then we must ensure that there's an equitable distribution of the resources and of the power, and that they're not discriminated against on account of the gender. And then the second is really what we ourselves can do. how do we prepare ourselves? The board-ready female, how do we prepare ourselves? I don't want to talk about, there's several fora that we go there, they tell you how to be, how to develop the skills for boards. There's board training, there's all of those sort of things. There's several of those things that are there. I particularly like the theme of today's gathering by the society, which is about modeling ethical leadership and driving transformation. So it's really about not focusing on the technical skills, but really about how we can get ready and contribute to boards to bring about that positive transformation. When we talk about ethical leadership, really, what do we mean? It's just really, it's leadership that demonstrates and promotes appropriate conduct through personal actions and interpersonal relations. It demonstrates and it promotes. It doesn't say it's not leadership that speaks to. It is that demonstrates and promotes this thing through. So when we distill it, really, it's really defined as having people or being in positions, management or leadership positions, in which we will be able to promote and be an example. When it says demonstrate, be an example of appropriate ethical conduct in our actions and in our relationships in the workplace. I've always believed, and it's not exclusive to me, like many people think good leadership engenders good followership. And really, the best thing that we can do to promote a certain behavior in others is to actually model those behaviors. So if we want to drive ethics and transformation in the workplace, we need to model ethical behavior. So now, how do we model ethical behavior? Leadership with ethics, it's very important that we understand this, we develop this, and we recognize it in the business world because it's crucial to what it is. Apart from, like I say, nowadays, finance skills abound, legal skills abound. Here, we're producing very many graduates. So if they're looking for legal skills, as you have, technical, accounting, everybody is there. What are you bringing? What are you recognized for? That's something that may distinguish you to say, no, this person, she's someone of integrity. No, this person is someone of ethics. Because boards are recognizing that we need those. Why? Boards, right now, organizations are under a microscope, being subjected to scrutiny by regulators, by your buying public, by anything social media has carried it. The reputational damage, the risk of reputational damage, it's very costly, very hard for organizations. Therefore, organizations are seeking people that can help them to arrange themselves, help them to make the right decisions, And so these leadership skills are very critical for us. So really, we need to start to think out of the box, not think about our traditional skills. Of course, when we're talking about being board ready, in the past, like I said, it's all those skills we'll be looking for. But now, COVID has taught us that we're looking for people that know how to manage in times of crisis or lead in times of crisis. Because as we saw, so if you have a proven ability to say, you know what, during the pandemic, this was how I led and led. Some of us were frozen. Some people were frozen into inertia because of the shock. For some people, because they didn't know what to do, they wasted a lot of time deciding, analyzing whether other companies had jumped. But some recognized that, hey, change is here. And then they moved on. Now, what we have to recognize in the world of business today is that change has now become a constant. The factors that are shaping the world of business today are different from have been seen at any era previously. Technology, the innovation, things like the pandemic. We had COVID. The other day, somebody told me one, I don't know what they called it, flu something. It was a mixture of flu plus COVID, one joined together, I don't know what. And I said they said that's the latest. There's all sorts. Threats of biological warfare, they bring all sorts of things that are coming. So the change is constant. How are you, as a leader, able to adapt to this changing circumstance? And how do you thrive in terms of crisis? Now, of course, these are skills that can be acquired. Of course, the best way to acquire skills is learning by doing. But guess what? You may not always have the opportunity to practice in order to acquire those skills by doing. And therefore, there are other ways in which you can learn, formal learning and then informal learning. Nowadays, I think that learning has been so democratized that we can find it anywhere and we can pick and choose. Just go on the internet. I want to learn about project management. You will find thousands. that are even, in fact, you don't even have to pay. They are telling you what it is. We can do that. And then we learn from one another. But I think that as we prepare for boards, we need to take responsibility for our own learning. I always say that the brain is a muscle. And if it is a muscle, like any muscle, if I want to grow biceps, I will start to do push-up and carry weights. It will grow. How do you strengthen your brain muscles? It's by exercising it. How do you exercise it? By learning and learning new things. If it's the things that you already know, then your brain will just go redundant. But guess what? Each time you exercise your muscle in the brain, you strengthen it. And then, therefore, when you get a seat on the board, you have so exercised the brain that whether it's something you've learned or not, you are able to contribute. Another advice that I got many years ago, not in terms of sitting on boards, but in terms of when I was starting off my career as faculty. And then I had a mentor. I had to go and learn how to teach in one school for like 3 months. And then I had a mentor there. And, he said something to me that I have never forgotten. He said to me, yes, you must prepare for your classes. A minimum of 8 hours preparation. I nearly died. I said 8 hours presentation, but that wasn't it. He said, but outside of that, make sure you read every day, 30 minutes. Read everything. Read anything, but just read. I didn't know why. I'd always been a voracious reader anyway, but I had never been deliberate. So sometimes I can pick up something and I can read for 3 days straight until the novel or book finishes and leave it. And then I don't read for I don't know what until I find the time. But he made me think about being intentional and deliberate, because you're also exercising your brain. You're reading different things there. You're able to form your thoughts, develop your ideas, because that's what people are looking for on the bus. They're looking for critical thinking. They're looking for someone that has problem-solving abilities, because you've read so much. And if I was ever in doubt about the benefits of reading, it was made clearer to us. Several years ago, we had Mr. Dangote come to the business school to come and talk about things. And surprise, surprise, surprise to me, he was talking about reading. And he gave an example, and I said because he said it publicly. And he said, just a few days, apparently he also has the habit of reading. And he said, well, just a short while ago, he was reading, then climate change was just not something that, now everybody knows, well, almost everybody knows, but not so much. But he saw something about climate change, and he decided that, let him read about climate change. And he said he just read it, found it a bit interesting, and just thought, these are Oyinbo people, and he left it. And he said a week after he read that, he got a call from Tony Blair, who was then former Prime Minister, who said to him that his wife, Jerry, was coming to Nigeria for the first time. And he wondered if Mr. Dangote could host something for her and introduce her to a few people. Oh, and he agreed. Tony Blair was a friend. Oh, yes, come and all of that. And he said, of course, as the host, the guest of honor was sat next to him. And he said, and as dinner began, she brought conversation about climate change. He didn't know that her NGO was about climate change. He said he was very proud that he was able to contribute. And that after that, he was saying, hey, so if he hadn't read this thing, how would the woman have looked at him? So you never know when you will need this thing. But more than that, it's helping you to. So being board ready is not about, they have called me to come and be board in energy sector. I will master. Of course, you must master all of that, but it goes beyond that. So we need to exercise this. So with ethical leadership, I just have a few things. But first of all, we should look at it that it is a responsibility. When we go on boards, we always say, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and perhaps maybe that will be spoken about during the conversation. But we have a duty of care. We have a duty of loyalty. And then we also have a duty that's legal. In other words, the laws, we must comply with the rules and regulations. Duty of care is that we must always do things that are in the best interest of this. Duty of loyalty is that I don't need to explain that you'll be loyal. So basically, we can look at that. And ethical leadership cuts across that. And I just thought that I would just, mention a few things about this ethical leadership, since this is what they had told me to do. But then one of the things about ethical leadership is that there's certain traits that, make one recognizable as an ethical leader and able to bring that onto the boards that we sit on. The first is that lead by example, and I think I've said that. But what is leading by example is that we should have the same expectations for ourselves as we set for those who work for us. So it's not do as I say, but it's really do as I do. How do we behave? When the people see us doing deals, that's what they learn. To cut corners, that's what they learn. It doesn't matter what we say. And of course, if we're doing it from the top, that's what they learn. If they see that when it comes to paying taxes and things, we say, oh no, go and find somebody that can help us to bring it down, that's what they learn. So again, we need to lead by example. The second is that we need to be willing to evolve and adapt. And I think that I alluded to that just now when I was speaking about how, in crisis situations, what it is that has happened. So, we need to reflect. A lot of those things call for reflection. Do we pause? Do we consider things? Do we recognize that change is coming or has come? And do we quit doing things the way we've always done them? In other words, this is what we met. Therefore, it must be like that. In my organization where I work, I've eliminated, when I ask somebody, why is this happening? They say, that's how we have been doing it. It is eliminated. Nobody can say that. Don't tell me that that's how you've been doing it. Instead, provide for me the justification why you're doing it today. And we must be like that. It's not that this is how I met it, this is how they've been doing. When I came to the board, that's how I saw. I just decided to behave. No, why are you there? Why did they bring you if you can't add value? And then respect people, especially your board members. Of course, as females, sometimes our views can be dismissed. Sometimes they are overt aggressions. Sometimes they are microaggressions. But it doesn't mean that we should react in the same manner. Because somebody is rude or has spoken to us in a rude manner, when we want to answer, we give it back to the person. After all, I'm a woman, my mouth is sharper than you. You diminish yourself. It's true. It's true. That respect, people recognize it. Even when insulted, the way you answer, because you will come across people like that on the board. That just look at it. And especially now that younger people are this small girl. And Nigerians are very quick to do this small girl. Where are you coming from? I've been running this company before you were born, So again, we need to respect someone. Not showing respect to the people around you can quickly create a negative or hostile environment. People have been exited from boards because they are deemed to be disruptive. Somebody was exited, and I said, hey, do you know what happened? Of course, it was very sad. It was quite a lucrative board position. Do you know what happened? She said, they said I was too contentious. I said, so you went and started fighting with everybody? She said, no. I said, no, but how do you can disagree, but not in a disagreeable manner. So we need to be mindful of that. The second thing about ethical leadership is that we must communicate openly. Sometimes on board, there are caucuses that are formed. Then we discuss, we take this position, we forge this camp, allies, before we arrive, we protect interests. But without communication, the issues can go undetected. Like I mentioned to you with that board, when I said to them, hey guys, we discuss everything at the table. Bring it to the table, let's discuss. It doesn't mean that sometimes you don't go and lobby for your position before you come up. But you discuss the things on the table. It's more about getting the view of people so that you can speak to them. So when somebody says, is it lobbying? I say, no, it's not lobbying. Before I get to that table, I want to know what people are thinking. I want to know what the issues are so that I can bring them to the table and we can have an open and frank discussion. And so that I can prepare to have those conversations. So bring things up at the board. Seek information, express your concerns, ask questions, be open. Don't think you'll be considered disruptive. You are introducing rigor into the discussions and deliberations, and you are leading the board to make decisions that are favorable to the organization. And then, if you are a board chair or committee chair, please recognize your role. That you must mediate. The role of a chair or of a committee chair is not because you are the one that has all the knowledge, you are the expert. That's why. Maybe sometimes they put you because you are the expert. But it's not to go there and then during the meeting you are the only one that speaks. No. The role of a chair is like a conductor. I always say it. When you have a conductor, when if you go to Muson, you see an orchestra that's playing, there's a conductor just there waving the stick. When I was younger, I used to think, why is man just waving the stick like this? I didn't know that stick, it was really a sign for you sing, you come down, you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't play an instrument. But if he doesn't conduct well, we can make beautiful music. And that's the role of a chair. If you don't conduct well, you can't arrive at the best. So look at yourself as a conductor, as a choreographer. You just show people, and therefore you need to welcome views. And if there are females on the board, sometimes it's into our mentality that females are seen and not heard. So some of us, subconsciously, will still carry it out. We get the seats on the board, and I hope that maybe we can speak to that. We still feel, how did I get here? Imposter syndrome or dreamlike state. And then we go there, let me not talk too much. Let me observe. It is the role of the chair to pull out people, because we put them there, not because of fine face. We must display. They brought us there because of our brain. not because of our fine face or our brawn. We are not men that have muscles there. And therefore, we should seek the ways in which we can actually bring this out by encouraging participation, not leaving those that are silent to remain silent. And lastly, I think that we must, we must display these values. We must take ethical leadership as a responsibility. And I don't know how this is done, but we must stand on moral high ground because it's important. It's important. People have been asked to step down from boards, not because they did anything that was damaging to the organization, but because their moral conduct outside was something that cast aspersions and a slur on the reputation of the organization. And therefore, they've been asked to say, step down. So really, we must recognize that as leaders, people are looking up to us. As female leaders, more people are looking up to us. And therefore, we must model this behavior. And above all, we need to build trust. How do we build trust? Do what you say. Be somebody that people can trust, not the one of you, I will say this one today, I will say this one tomorrow. Not that you can't change your mind, but people know that you have their back, you're acting in the best interest of the organization. Sometimes when we get on board, because maybe the chairman or someone was the one that nominated us, when we get there, we feel that we have to cite that person. No. Board directors have a duty too. When I spoke about the duty of loyalty, your duty is to the organization. And therefore, you must be fair, not your personal interest, not the interest of the person who brought you there, but really to the organization. Somebody asked me once, whose side are you? And I said, I'm on the side of the company. That's what it should be. So we must seek to build trust. And as we begin this journey, I would like to say good luck to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Cornedo. I love the fact that you put a lot of responsibility on the part of the females, so we don't go in with the entitlement mentality. Thank you so much. Without further ado, I'll be calling up our guest speaker, Mr. Edmond Onuzo, who is the chairman of the board of directors, GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC. He rose to increasing levels of responsibility until he became the general sales manager in 1987. He joined SmithKline Beecham in 1990, and in 1995 became the executive director, moved to Ghana, and came back to Nigeria following the merger of SmithKline Beecham and Glaxo Wellcome in 2021. In 2025, he took on the responsibility of managing the sales and marketing functions of GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceutical until his retirement in December 2005. He was first appointed to the board as a non-executive director on the 1st of June 2006 and became chairman 12th June 2014. Ladies and the two gentlemen, including himself, we have the chairman of a board in our midst. Let's take full advantage of it. Thank you. It's not a coup, we promise.
Well, I can actually talk even when there's no light. And I know advertisers tell us that we see better when there's no light. It's my pleasure indeed to be here to speak to us. And I see it more as sharing experience and also to stimulate our thoughts. Can I therefore say all protocols observed? Because I know I have just 20 minutes. The first challenge I have, yes, I have, is how to speak for 20 minutes. I don't think I've been able to do that before. Secondly, speaking. When the whole professor of Pan Atlantic University has spoken, I wish I didn't accept it. But having done that, I have no choice. Now, what I would like to do is, I'm going to talk through the paper I have. The reason is that if it doesn't cage me, I will go to town and I like to talk. And before you know it, I might be on one point and the town will be up. So I will try to stick to what I put down and then we will discuss thereafter. I would like to start by congratulating our women, especially those who are in the corporate world. For this occasion, and celebration, and as I said, I do hope that they will remain memorable. Secondly, I know that the International Women's Day is a time chosen to celebrate the accomplishments of women, not just in Nigeria, the world over. And then, of course, the theme, embrace equity. It's also quite relevant during this occasion because whether we like it or not, it is still an enormous gap. It still exists. A gap in equity. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. You know, with respect to the gender bias against women, while embrace means holding closely to one's, chest or arm as a sign of affection, or accepting willingly and enthusiastically. In this forum today, I believe, to me, embrace is actually a double-barreled gun. On one hand, it tells the women folk that they have to accept eagerly, and they have to seize the opportunity to take equity. And for us, the men, whom I represent here, to accept to surrender equity and to comply. Our prof has done justice to the definitions and explanations of equity and all that. And in fact, what I'm going to do is that those areas she has touched and discussed very strongly, I'll try to avoid unless I cannot help. So, again, equity defines the state, equality, and ideal, just, fair, and impartial distribution. And I think, in a nutshell, it's talking about justice. And we should clearly differentiate this from equality, which aims to ensure that everyone gets the same thing. Now, achieving equity will mean creating level playing field for individuals of all genders, and all sexes, all backgrounds, and so on. And of course, it must be practiced, not just in the corporate office, but in every endeavor of life. Now, for women, with respect to equity, we want to see inclusiveness without bias, providing opportunity on the basis of equality and removal of man-made barriers and man-made disadvantages, which could be sociocultural and, of course, the gender roles. And these all negatively impact women in the pursuit of excellence in what they do. Can I quickly look at female equity and the boardroom? What can we expect? And what's the current situation today we have in Nigeria? There's actually no been saying that female representation in the boards of Nigerian companies, whether they are public or private, is low, resulting in segments of the market. We talked about some bodies and institutions having rules and regulations just to ensure that we improve equity. And I'll give just a few examples, and I know that Prof also mentioned them. Of course, the CBN, well aware of the minimum of 30%, female representation. And today, the female are reaping the fruits. Because there's no gainsaying that when you look at the commercial banks, for example, the result is very evident. Female deputy managing directors, CEOs, abound. And of course, I know that SEC has not, clearly set any quota, as well as, other bodies like even the, Society for Corporate Governance. But they all try to encourage, that we should consider, or the board should consider, the place of women, ensuring that they, equitable to give them what they should get. I'm mindful of the fact that in filling board vacancies, therefore, women must be considered. Well,
I hope one day we'll get to the situation of not just recommending, but also prescribing quotas, as we have it done in some of the developed markets in the world. Research shows several examples. But let me just pick on the top 30 capitalized companies in Nigeria. As at 2020 December, we know that men represented just 24% of directors in those 30 most capitalized companies in Nigeria. And they also made up 17% of chairpersons. Only 3% of CEOs. However, by August 2021, 25% of top 20 companies this time around have at least 30% of female representation on their boards. And I think within that short period, I would say that they've done pretty well. Now, I think Nigeria compares with the world, and albeit we can even say better. However, if we're saying better, we must recognize the fact that there are so many other religious and cultural practices in some parts of the world that actually inhibit women from attaining those goals. What's the average for the world? 6% for board chairs and 23% for board members. Now, what are some of the challenges and the obstacles, or what I call root causes of the gaps identified by the researchers? IFC and ILO, International Finance Corporation and international level organizations, and others show that there are many qualified women as men with the right skills and experiences to serve on boards. So it's not for want of supply, and that's clearly what I want us to understand. However, women are generally disadvantaged because of the cultural constraints I've mentioned. In Nigeria, for example, and research was undertaken, and one of the things is that women, for whatever reason, have been stereotyped. And so they're discriminated upon. The prejudices are there. And this could be attributed to the fact that men are seen as the leaders of the society, and it's one of the factors limiting female participation in top leadership positions. Senna and Karaye actually did some job on this, in addition to Lincoln and Adedoyin in 2012. There is this feeling, and of course it's true, that women are thought to be good wives and mothers and not encouraged to take up leadership roles. Because we live in a male-dominated society and highly oriented, there is the issue here that the women are expected to be submissive, because we again have a submissive culture, regardless of the level of achievement. And we do hear some men saying, well, whatever you are, you're over there. Once you're at home, you're my wife. So women are expected to be submissive, but, sadly and strangely, even in the workplace. And furthermore, there are three main challenges that they also face in terms of gender diversity, and I'm going to mention them. And research also has proved what I'm going to say. Number one is what we call the leaky pipeline syndrome. You know what I mean by pipeline and leaking? That's the syndrome. And what does that mean? Representation of women decreases as the level of management increases, resulting in continued male domination of, senior management positions, culminating in the executive directorships and then CEOs and the boards going to the men. And it's not too far to know why this happens, and our able prof has also, mentioned it. We know that apart from the office, women are encumbered with a lot of things, in the home and in the larger society. And so you find that as they move up, these things, constitute constraints, to their rising beyond where they, are. Second, I will call glass walls. Of course, we know these are walls, but when the wall is made of glass, then there is something different. And what do I mean by, glass wall? Many managers are segregated by gender, resulting in women being more often managers in support functions, such as HR. And then what I'm saying, of course, is empirical. You notice it all in, several companies. And not just in Nigeria, world over. HR, finance, administration, while the men dominate functions that are considered more strategic. You want to find the men in operations, in R&D, business development. And of course, these are the jobs that actually lead typically to the CEO level and board membership. So even by that, the women are disadvantaged, notwithstanding the fact that they're probably far more in number in the organizations. Interestingly, even in the board, we also find that glass walls exist. How? The women are likely to be non-executive directors rather than the EDs. And the glass walls are also limiting their influence in boardrooms due to lack of critical mass. Generally, it's been discussed, and we know that there are fewer in the board, and for that reason, they tend to get disadvantaged. And of course, it is also true that in many companies, they're absent in very key, committees. The third is what I then call the glass ceiling. Remember that these are all glasses. You can see through, but you may not walk through. Now, discriminatory barriers that prevent qualified women from, rising to positions of power and responsibility and advancing to higher positions within an organization simply because they are women, even when they make up majority in the workforce. In some cases, they're actually frustrated out of, at the lower levels when they are perceived to be threats. The glass ceiling, therefore, refers thus to vertical discrimination of women, mostly used against them in companies and even in public offices. It's therefore necessary to boldly address this in our environment, as is done in most developed economies, to the extent that quota systems have been put in place to redress this, and I hope that sometime quotas will also be put in place in Nigeria to ensure equity. Now, when there's equity in the boardroom, what are the things we expect or what we see? First, we see transformation and what I call metamorphosis or observable changes that are evident and they occur, and I will summarize them very quickly. Research has actually proved that inclusion of women improves the quality of board deliberations, and different perspectives increase information available for exploring and resolving complex issues. And it's also true that female directors tend to be more independent in their views compared with men, for many reasons, of course. Now, also better decisions come up from that. The gender diversity adds variety to the board's viewpoint and enhances skills enabling resolution of, as I said earlier, on complex questions that protect business from a number of risks. And you know what? Research also shows with great diversity are more effective and innovative because members have different processes and strategies for problem solving. And moreover, it's shown that men and women tend to work more closely and more collaboratively, and therefore generate more ideas and draw from multiple perspectives, and in the end, devise robust solutions to problems. And as we were told, and it's true, that gender diversity reduces groupthink, and doing so results in better decisions that take into consideration the diverse range of possibilities. Women tend to be very cautious, and men tend to be what I call overconfident. So research has also revealed that female board members help to balance the overconfidence of the male CEOs and board members, and the result was improved decision-making for the business, particularly in some areas where you find that the CEO wants to show or prove that he's doing a very good job, and he's not taking that overestimation in returns, and in doing so, risks are diminished. Both of which, of course, we know the consequence that shareholder values will diminish. Equity in the boardroom also improves board culture, and board culture sets important tone for organizations, especially with regards to decision-making on strategic direction. And the board with a mix of genders report greater engagement in strategic vision, reinforcing accountability, and implementing policies, managing risks. The strong financial performance has referenced before, and it is actually very true. And in fact, I know that researchers in a number of companies, countries have proved, given statistics of how the business grew or improved significantly because you had the right mix of women in the board. In fact, in a case that was done by Credit's research bureau, or in fact, it corroborated one that was done earlier on, indicating that the companies that had critical mass in equity actually experienced as high as 16% return on equity and felt better during economic recession. So it is important, and we're told that the critical mass is somewhere around 30% minimum for women in the board. Board readiness for females, the need for that, then the attributes of a board member, and of course my expectations, from female board members. Very quickly, I'm going to take these three together. Now, let me also reiterate here that gender diversity is not easy to achieve because historically, directors are overwhelmingly men. And they have also prioritized personal networks and insider recommendations as sources of board candidates. In addition, business often seek candidates with prior board experiences, and because it's mostly men, that criterion, therefore, is an impediment to sourcing female candidates. So female who are aspiring to be recommended for board appointments must show themselves ready for the position and the responsibilities that go with it. Serving on a board must not be taken lightly. Board readiness females must be ethical in character, of course already mentioned, not just in character and in personality, and take into consideration the norms, principles, values, and standards that guide individual and group behaviors with respect to what is right or wrong. She must therefore influence ethical values in the organizations through her behavior and set standards. And in addition to the ethical behavior, she must also be transformational. That is, modeled to drive transformation. A transformational leader should inspire positive change in her followers. Take control of situations by conveying clear vision of the group's goal and challenge the status quo. Here are some of the areas of focus that I believe must be taken cognizance of. Number one, of course, transparency. I'm glad that was referred to earlier on. Then awareness of activism that is taking place now, in the capital market. You can no longer take shareholders for granted. Of course, awareness of the media, and no better way to talk about that than what Professor Kennedy said. I mean, take a situation, for example, you are in the board of a company, and in these days of road rage, somebody bashes your car and you come out and start arguing. Before you know it, it's either you slap or the person slaps, and then fight ensues. Isn't that a terrible damage to the reputation of the organization? Because in today's world, everybody carries camera in his pocket. And before you know it, there may be 100, videos all over the place telling who you are and what happened. So must be very careful about that. Of course, we've talked about the social, environment, and governance. ESG is becoming, very complex web for businesses to operate in. A few more things, of course, positive attitude and being available and ready. It's also important because if you're appointed, you must attend all meetings. And she talked about continuous learning. You want to be a member of a board, then you should be able to know what the organizations do. You must know what that industry also does and prepare yourself because nobody's going to, get you to go and, prepare you for that. So if you don't, then of course, you are not likely to be considered. And of course, you must add value, just as she has said. You are not there just to raise your status. And unfortunately, some people who seek board positions do it, just for that reason. What are the attributes, therefore, and what are my expectations of an effective board member? Number one, I say it must be positive, future-thinking person and have that skill. Focus on opportunity rather than risk, and therefore must be opportunity-driven. Spend less time on past performance or old data and more time on strategic planning for future success. I'll be more interested in how much stock I have for the next 3 months than what I sold in the past. What are the future risks to the business? Are they cultural? Are they technological? Are they talent related? That's what you should be thinking about. Now, listening skills and what I call emotional intelligence is important. We talk about listening skills, being good listeners. A lot of us, don't really learn to listen. However, beyond that, being a good listener is an essential behavior skill for directors, while emotional intelligence, which I'm emphasizing, is also a sine qua non. Emotional intelligence, in this case, is capacity to be aware of, control, and express your emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously, empathetically, and it is key to professional and personal success. Of course, creativity and strong digital skills are also important. It is not just that you should, be social media savvy, but you must understand how to use technology. ESG skills, environmental, social, and governance. We know that it has become so important that is the consideration of a lot of big organizations when they want to invest. And so it's an area that anybody seeking a board appointment or those who are already there must give emphasis to. Many investors now use environmental, social, and governance factors to evaluate companies' sustainability and ethical impact. And directors should embrace these factors and consider how they may impact a business. People with ESG skills, training, and credentials today are in very high demand. Now, concluding, I would say that my expectations would also include desirable mix of hard and soft skills, resourcefulness, flexibility, strong sense of strategic direction to lead people and the organization gainfully and devoid of ego. Furthermore, I would like to encourage those who are already there aspiring to be careful not to sit on too many boards, because then distractions will come. I would like to finally end my paper, by recommending the following, to accelerate company boards. Number one, there should be an organization of women who have excelled in their professional callings, who should be peer endorsers for public and private board service. I know that women in business exists, but I will also suggest an association of women corporate directors who should be vanguard of accelerating gender diversity, especially the interest of women in corporate boards. And networking is very important in this area. And in this digital age, women organizations should also be encouraged and consider to set up independent database application or site for potential candidates for board succession planning. And finally, I know we have the Institute of Directors, but I will also ask that they be on hand to also champion a database of potential top women managers and executives that can be considered for eligible board appointments. I want to rest my case here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Onuzo. That was amazing, especially hearing from a male perspective. So now we're going to go straight into the panel conversation, and I will be calling up our esteemed speakers. First up is Adeolu Adewumi Zer, Global Strategist and Transformation Leader. She recently served as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer for Allianz Nigeria Insurance, Allianz Nigeria, a subsidiary of the German multinational Allianz SE. Prior to this role, she was the first and only female member of the Allianz Nigeria board as non-executive director. Concurrently, she was also the regional head of mergers, acquisitions, and transformation Africa for the Allianz Group, where she led the acquisition of what is now Allianz Nigeria in 2018. In the wake of sustained losses at Allianz Nigeria, Adeolu was brought in to stabilize the business and lead a transformation effort that would shift the company onto a clear path to profitability. Thank you so much for joining us, Adeolu. Next up, Mrs. Binkpe Afolabi, partner at KPMG. She is a partner in internal audits, governance, risk and compliance services with over 22 years of professional experience. Before joining the IA and GRC services, she was head of the quality and risk management unit for over a decade and was responsible for the firm's risk management, ethics and independence policies, processes, and protocols. Thank you so much, Binkpe, for joining us today. Next is Mrs. Claire Omashe, founder, managing director of JNC International, a 19-year-old turnkey medical equipment solutions company, which exclusively represents 28 global original medical equipment manufacturers. She was the chairman and founder of Vasipharm Limited, a 23-year-old cold chain vaccine, pharma, and medical consumable wholesale distribution company. She sits on several boards, is also an independent director of the renowned Development Bank of Nigeria, Better Glass Nigeria PLC, and is a member of the Governing Council of Pan-Atlantic University. She also chairs 2 large NGOs. She is chairman of board of LEAP Africa, Youth Leadership Development, and is a director of Aspire Coronation Foundation of Access Bank PLC. Thank you so much, Claire, for joining us today. Joining us virtually is Irene Netima, Company Secretary of First Bank Nigeria Limited. I hope she's on the screen now. She's the Company Secretary of First Bank Nigeria Limited, a position she has held since 2016. Until her appointment, she was the General Counsel of the FBN Capital Group, which is now FBN Quest Merchant Bank. In that capacity, she served as a member of the Management Committee and as Secretary to the various board committees. She has worked in 3 of the top 10 Nigeria law firms, and prior to joining FBN Capital, served as the Corporate Counsel and Head, Corporate Services of First Funds Limited. In this capacity, she was responsible for drafting and reviewing the shareholder agreement governing the company's private equity investments, reviewing due diligence reports of potential investments, and liaising with outside counsel. Welcome, Irene. Also joining us virtually is Mr. Do Okonjo, who is currently the Chief Executive Officer and Vice Chairman of Fine and Country West Africa. She's a legal practitioner and is passionate about leadership development, real estate and entrepreneurship as a means of wealth creation and nation building. As a real estate practitioner, she's a convener of the annual Refined Investor Series to provide an accurate roadmap and insight on the Nigerian real estate markets. In her second half, she is motivated by helping high-impact leaders expand their zone of possibilities and maximize leadership, business, and wealth outcomes through a proprietary brand of ACE business and leadership coaching. She recently finished the Berkeley Executive Coaching Certification Program and actively coaches C-suite leaders and high-impact entrepreneurs. Thank you so much, Mr. Okonjo, for joining us today. Last but in no way the least is Mr. Isaac Orolugbagbe. He is a senior fellow at the Strategy, Entrepreneurship, and ESPEP Department of Lagos Business School and an adjunct faculty, Strategy and Corporate Governance at Strathmore Business School, Nairobi, Kenya. His areas of interest include business strategy, innovation, and corporate governance. And as CEO of Ancestral Limited, a strategy and innovation consulting company, he advises companies such as Merck, Inland Containers Nigeria Limited, Syfax Group, Green Spring Schools, and Courier Plus Services Limited. Currently, he is the chairman of Buck Trust Microfinance Bank Limited, chairman Fastizers Foods and Confectionery Limited, and board director for Beta Computers Limited, Park City Homes Limited, and IDC Farms Limited. In the past, he served as director for Thomas Wyatt PLC and vice chairman of Red Star Express PLC. Thank you so much, Mr. Isaac, for joining us today. So now we'll be going straight into the panel discussion. We'll do that for about 45 minutes. I must acknowledge we have over 150 participants who are joining us online, so we look forward to what should be a rich conversation. Okay, can Mr. Okonjo and Irene please confirm that they can hear us before we start? Can you hear us, please? Okay, we'll go ahead and hopefully they can hear us. Okay, so both the keynote speakers and the guest speaker spoke to the supply side and the demand side of the problem. So what do we think, Adeolu? Is it a supply side or a demand side problem for not having a good number of female directors on board?
So I'm glad that it was acknowledged that we should no longer have a supply side problem. When we think about particularly the Gen X generation of women leaders that have come in. I myself, part of that crew, born in 1977, so this year reaching 46, and of course joined by a number of very talented and accomplished women across the world, not just in Nigeria, but particularly in Nigeria. I've been really impressed since I've returned how many just really impressive women I've met in this time that I've been here, in a couple years I've been here. And then you wonder, surrounded by all these powerful, accomplished women, why we still show such disastrous numbers. I call them disastrous numbers. When you look at the board level, when you look at the executive level, when you look at the chair level. So yes, we can try to pat ourselves on the back that we're a bit ahead of average, but when the bar is low, I'm not sure beating that bar is much to crow about. So really, to me, it's demand. And not demand, I mean, we'll talk around a lot of things, what we can do to increase the demand, but at the end of the day, it comes down to attitude. If attitudes don't change, if society doesn't change its perspective on how we view women and our place in this same society, things won't change in business. Because we are surrounded by society. We are raised by our parents who are part of the society. We pass on these attitudes to our children. So if we're in a world where we still seem to think that women are not capable, then what are our daughters learning? What are our sons learning? Representation matters. So if you don't see yourself, then you think you can't make it happen. And if society is additionally telling you that it's not for you, then you're not enough, then how dare you be able to go past that?
Okay, thank you so much, Adiolu. Mr. Isaac, I'm coming for you. I can see you smiling already. So what do you say? Is there really no demand at board level?
Well, I mean, Diolu is completely right. When you look at the cultural perspective, I have a very horrible example, and this is straight from the very, very leadership of Nigeria, where our president said, "Who is the woman? She belongs to the kitchen and the other room." I mean, you can imagine the kind of conversation that is taking place within the living room of people that we thought are enlightened. And this is a woman with a master's degree, with a lot of accomplishment, you know, and condemned to the kitchen and the other room. So you will see that in a lot of places, and it's affecting women. That is on the demand side. But I also believe sincerely there's also a problem on the supply side. Yes, we've done well, especially the advocacy group, the women groups. The numbers are increasing. The last time I checked, 12 Nigerian universities now have more female enrollment than male enrollment. When I was in the college, I studied chemistry. There are only 3 or 4 women in a class of 30. The game is getting better now. We're having women doctors, engineers. Professions are no longer exclusive reserve of men. But the number is still really, really low. How can it be just 12 universities? What is the percentage of women in the country? 50% of Nigerians are women. So what percentage of our women are going to colleges? What percentage of our women are working? So I still think we aren't doing enough. Definitely we aren't doing enough. If this country is going to make it, we cannot keep 50% of the population away on the basis of culture and expect that Nigeria will make progress. No. The demand side is there. The supply is also there, especially for those of us who are in this room. There's a huge responsibility for the women that have opportunities to at least escape the glass that my brother has talked about. The glasses are there. So if you have an opportunity in leadership position, you are not there for yourself. You are also there for all the women who are coming behind you. There is nothing that succeeds like success. When people start, shining with tiny opportunities, you are giving confidence to young girls who are coming behind you. You are demolishing the stereotype of men who believe that women can't make it. So the more we have women succeeding, the better it will be for the society. And some of the percentages that you've heard from the studies are from regulated environments. Businesses aren't really meant for regulation. Businesses are set up to find customers and to please customers. So when government is saying 30%, 40%, what of the remaining limited liability companies where there's no such regulations? So women should come, set up their company, and succeed. The more we have successful women, the more women we can attract to the board. What we're having now, just a few women are occupying all the board seats. That's the kind of thing you see in South Africa. We say 30% of women should be. It's the same small crowd of women. So let our daughters set up businesses. Let parents assist. You see, I have a problem. I got 3 daughters. And I never trained my kids to be in the other room or in the kitchen. So I'm hoping that when their generation rises, we are going to have population of extremely successful. The interesting thing, nobody talk about what God created. A 15-year-old girl standing beside a 15-year-old man. Are they the same? Physically, the girl is taller and bigger. Intellectually, she's sharper. She's more aware. It takes a long time at 21, 25 before the boy can come near the 15-year-old girl. So this is how God created it. Yeah, some people have complex, so they try to create a disadvantage for the advantaged people, which is who you are. Do not accept that, what do I call it now, bad name, bad title that they give women. You see them at the age of 15. They are not anywhere near the 15-year-old boy. It's not the same. Yes, disadvantages are there. You have to raise families and all that. But you can also meet very successful women. They will teach you how they cope. And I've met so many. Most of these professional, successful women, they don't have 6, 8 kids, no. They only give birth to the number that they can handle. And you see in companies where women seems to be rising, there's a bank where we had this kind of discussion. The MD was there and a few other senior people. There is an unwritten law how these women run their homes. If you earn big money, why will you take a house help and pay 10,000 to a house help? Is that the help? You are just giving problem to yourself. Spend the money. Look for people that can actually take some of the burden off you so that you can concentrate on the office job. Don't fight your mother-in-law. Use your mother-in-law to advance your career. These are what successful women are doing. And we need to send the skill round for many women to embrace it. Instead of fighting your mother-in-law who loves her grandchildren, encourage her to come to your house to take care of these grandchildren.
Ladies, I thought would give me a round of applause for these points.
Now, this is from a lady that is very successful. She said, look, why will I employ a house help when my mother-in-law is ready to do the job for me? So when I travel and I get $5,000 extra code, I dedicate $2,000 to her. Look, I am at peace in my office because she does a better job looking after the kids than I do. So those who have done it well, everybody has one trick or the other that they've used to shine. I don't think the supply is enough. No. I am looking for, most of the offices we don't have enough women to put in senior role. Just like Oga said, but by the time they're getting to AGM, they've gone. We don't know what is pulling them out. But if you get them, it's beautiful. There is no board with a woman present that will not tell you there's a serious advantage. It's like talking about girls' school or exclusively boys' school and then compare it to mixed school. No, the boys start posing because there's a woman in town. But if they're just boys' school, they won't bath for 10 days. There's no problem. The same thing with a board where there are things that female bring to the board. And it's because they're women, they're mothers. They are more empathetic. There are decisions on my board that we voted, and we say, clear everybody. And the woman said, hey, remember, those are somebody's father, somebody's husband that you're about to clear. Why don't you look at it in some gentler way so that their family will not be wrecked? And look, the whole thing changed just because there is a woman on the board who is looking at some other perspective that we don't see. So for me, Nigeria would be better if we can get more supply. We don't have enough supply. No, we don't. And then, of course, we have problem on our side on the demand, which I think they've already discussed that extensively. Thank you.
Thank you so much for, for all of that. I mean, that response has just opened the door to so many other conversations we're going to be having. So I'm going to be asking, Irene, please, can you hear us now? Because the next question is going to you. Please confirm if you can hear.
She's talking now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes. There's a bit of an echo. Okay. So with what Mr. Isaac just spoke about now, he says there's a demand problem, but there's also a supply problem. I mean, you sit on a board. In fact, you might actually need to leave us earlier than we would want you to because you're rushing off to a board meeting. So now that there's supply, or there's supply but not enough, there is demand but not enough, it makes us reconsider or really look at what Mr. Onuzo had spoken about when he talked about the leaky pipeline. So I mean, you're in C-suite. So what are your perspectives about the leaky pipeline? Mr. Isaac also said he doesn't know where the women go when they get to AGM level. So can you please throw some more light on that?
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. I've listened I said, I'm sure you've heard this saying before, when women are dating, you're giving the advice, you better not be too choosy because, for every one man, there are 20 women. So I asked the question, if there are 20 women for every one man, when it comes to board positions, where are those 20 women? What happened to them? Right? So, I just want to put that out there. It's not that there are no qualified women out there. In First Bank today, at the C-suite level, we've got, let me say, the CIO is female, the chief compliance officer is female, head of marketing is female. So at that level, in certain sectors, you do have the women, but in certain sectors, so let's take technology for instance, it's not something that's traditionally a female domain, if you like. But that was before. Now you've got women. Somebody just reminded us, at our First Women Network session yesterday we had, for International Women's Day. We're listening to the keynote speaker, and he mentioned Funke Opeke. So there are women like that out there. I think it's not so much that there's no supply, it's that they haven't been given the opportunity. So women start at, again, I would take my own industry because I'm there. They start at the BA level in banks, for instance, and then, they begin to rise. But remember that at that time, they're probably in the 20s, they're, all of 22, 23, and perhaps by 27, 29, they're getting married, and then they're starting a family. I was listening to Professor Okonedo, and she said something like, they would say, oh, why is she not getting promoted? Because she went on maternity leave. She didn't disappear off the face of the earth. But so that's something that I guess that's part of the leaky pipeline, if you like. So women take time out to go have families. And guess what? They're penalized. Right. So that's where, so I think the thing for organizations, whether it's in the financial sector, whether it's in the legal sector, whether it's, it's in technology, decision makers, have to be intentional. So, a woman goes to have a baby. That doesn't mean that she can't work. And thank God for virtual now. I'm here, I'm working, I've been listening, but I've been working at the same time. So it's not like you can't put a baby in her crib or in his crib, right, and do your work. So it doesn't stop. I think that, that can begin to change. We can be deliberate about it to say, just because you're on maternity leave, doesn't mean that you've dropped off the face of the earth. You can still work. And maternity leave doesn't have to be unpaid, because again, that's also something that, women are sort of a bit reticent. Well, if I go on maternity leave, I only get paid for so much of the time, and then I don't get paid. So we have to, as decision makers, begin to be deliberate. HR managers have to be intentional about the types of policies that we have, so that women are not sidelined, women are not, dropped off because they've made a decision to go start a family. Starting a family is not a crime. It's not a crime that's punishable by, destroying your career. So I think that it's the intentionality, that those who are in the decision-making positions have to take. That women don't have to drop off just because they've made a decision to go start a family. But in terms of the demand, so come back to that. Yes, it's they get to a certain level, and then sort of like that pyramid starts to, it's wide at the base, and then it starts to narrow at the top, because women are taking, time out to go have babies. But I don't think that today, with everything that we have, I think the story can change, and it should change.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to come to you, Bingbe. So we've heard about, the differences in whether it's a supply side or a demand side problem. But going further to what one of the things Mr. Onuzo mentioned.
Ella, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear us? I think it's got more of us. Okay, we'll continue. Can you please check to see that they can still hear? Okay, so I was going to ask Bingbe a question. So you've heard about, okay, it's a demand and a supply side. So essentially what I'm hearing is it is both a demand side and a supply side problem. So like Professor Kwenedo so generously told us the different segments that need to focus on changing the number. She talked about policies, organizations, and the women themselves, and like a previous speaker had said, when you talk about the quota, by regulation, it's only happening in publicly listed companies and within certain sectors, financial sector, which is where we see the most women. So you work at KPMG. We have heard today leaky pipelines, glass ceilings, and glass walls. With all of that happening, what are you doing about it and female partners doing in KPMG and even across other such firms to ensure that these prevailing statistics begin to go down?
Thank you. Pardon me, everybody. I'm coming down with a bit of a cough, so my voice sounds a bit croaky right now, but please. Okay, from a KPMG perspective, what we see when we do this sort of board evaluation to our clients, every year that we are called to assist them to evaluate the efficiencies at their board level, we actually bring up this issue, gender equity. And we do see that it is a big issue. There are some organizations that are just catching on to this whole thing of getting females on board. And one thing that we've seen, let me talk first from KPMG. I mean, we have a quota that we've set for ourselves that by 2025, a third of our leadership positions will be occupied by females. We're on track. We're doing very well from that perspective. And that's also what we say to our clients when we actually interact with them, that this is something that you need to consider. And I'll give you an example. I had done a board evaluation a couple of years back, and there were 3 females on the board. Fast forward the next year, 2 females retired, and they were replaced with men, diminishing that female representation on that board. By the way, the issue is not from a supply side, because we do have females that can fill into those roles. But the criteria for recruitment actually says somebody that's been on the board that has experience and must be able to fill such roles. I mean, my fellow speaker said that it's still a few number of women sitting on the board. So what you see is that you are choosing the same board members from that few number. And that's really the issue. So it's the recruitment criteria can be revised in such a way to bring in younger people. People that with the competence, with the skills, with the courage to serve on such boards of big organizations. So what we see and what we encourage our clients and those that we interact with on a daily basis, in fact, regulators as well, we do tell that it is time that specific, percentages are stated in regulations so that women can actually, represent more on boards. I mean, that's what we are trying to do from a KPMG perspective. We lead by examples. Like I said, we are encouraging, we have more women actually becoming partners these days. Yes, fewer than males, but still about 2 to 1. We're seeing that happening, and we're encouraging people to actually stay along, as they grow in their career. It's not very easy for a woman to juggle these balls of career and family. It's really, really tough. Let's be honest. I'll give you another example. I'm aware of a recruitment that happened at a big FMCG organization. 35 people were asked to join the organization. There were about 5 females in the 35, amongst 35. This role is for engineers. So 5 females versus the 30 males. By the time they got to the final stage, 3 out of the females were still at that stage. What does that tell you? Females are smart, they're intelligent, they can do it. And all 5, those were the 5 that got recruited. But guess what? As they started their careers and as they moved up, 2 dropped off not too long after. Family. And that's the reality. If we don't, encourage women with good support systems where they can actually have people supporting them. I like the example is given, mother-in-laws, family. make use of that support system as women to, to propel your career. It's very important. But that's really what we see. So by the end of the day, what happens? Probably the last female standing may drop off at some point. Or if she ends up continuing, she's one out of how many males. So that the issues that we see out there is, cultural, social, and the fact that we're still in a society where people still feel that women should actually take a whole lot of work at home as against career. But with more encouragement, what we say to our people, what we say to our own staff, what we say to our clients, encourage your women, come up with policies. When you talk to regulators, come up with specific policies that promote women in professionally. I mean, I believe Nigeria will get there.
Okay, that's always how the conversation tends to taper off. Thank you so much.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Clearly not. Clearly not. Mr. Konjo, can you hear us? I was going to direct the next question at you. We can't hear you, but clearly you can hear us. Oh my. Okay, we'll come back to you just so that... are you muted? Okay, there's something wrong. She's clearly unmuted herself. Okay, if you can hear us, we'll come back to you. I'm so glad that you talked about board evaluation exercises, because I think if companies did those kind of things regularly, the problems would be highlighted over and over again. It's one thing to highlight the problem. It's another thing to do something else. It's another thing to do something else about it. So, Mr. Mashe, you sit on a number of boards, and from what she said, clearly board evaluation exercises are taking place. There are smart women, so sometimes the supply is there. So clearly there's something about the recruitment process. There's something there, and then all the speakers have spoken about the network approach being what has been done over the last number of years, on boards. What do you see on boards with regards to the recruitment process? Most people say, like Big also mentioned, that prior board experience is important. But the way that I see it, if you do proper board evaluation exercises, isn't there a way you say, okay, you might not have this, but like regular recruitment where you compromise what you're looking for to ensure that DEI is taken care of and the skills that you require on that board are met? So what do you see and what do you think should be done?
So thank you very much for that question, and I totally agree with Bingpei about the importance of board evaluation, but not just as an exercise, but as a diagnostic to infer better decision-making, not only for the board, for the company, but also for the polity. I sit on several boards, as you said, and we do board evaluation quite regularly. One or two might be to tick the box, and some are really in-depth. And if you choose the right kind of partners to do the board evaluation, the kind of inference you get out is something that strengthens the board. And I'll give you a clear example. And maybe I won't mention the board name at the moment, but I think one of the boards I sit on, there was no antagonism towards women, but I was the minority. I was the only female on a board of about 10 men. And of course, my first agenda as a woman on that board was to get more women in the board. And that is because how can 50% of society, 50% of the economy, 50% of decision-making in the world be made by women, and you're a minority and a single voice, a sole voice by yourself? So charity begins at home. Yes, you can use board evaluation to show the importance of women making decisions. You've heard today from our incredible speakers that when women are on boards, the depth of decision-making is much different. The outcome of decision-making is different. Yes, there's a little bit of more empathy. Not to say that men don't have empathy, but they do. But we tend to be a little bit less risk-taking than the men. And at the end of the day, you get a much better, more wholesome outcome. So the board evaluation does help in bringing out the importance of the women on the board. But beyond that, the women on the board have a very important role to play. you're not just there representing yourself, or if you're an independent director representing the community or the stakeholders, but you're actually representing the importance of women in society and getting more women on boards. And I think that's one of the things we don't realize, that we're actually ambassadors to the women folk and doing that. So I see myself on boards not only to do what I'm doing, but also to bring up more representation and being deliberate about it. We've heard today about how we should be intentional, how we should be deliberate. And if I may take this back, before we talk about boards, we need to talk about leadership as a whole. And leadership starts from management. So in an organization where I'm MD, I'm the MD of JNC, I'm proud to say in this room, I have 4 senior managers in the room: our head of finance, our GM of finance, our head of HR, our finance manager, our head of sales. Charity begins at home. If you don't encourage your own to be more ambitious, to look at the glass ceiling and break the glass ceiling. In JNC, do we have a glass ceiling? Absolutely not. So you must inculcate in all your leaders, especially your women folk, the fact that there's no glass ceiling, there's no glass wall unless you want to put one there. And give them the opportunity to excel and let them know it's a competitive sphere. And obviously, we're looking at the moment, and they haven't heard this. Our exco right now is 1 female exco and 2 female excos and 1 male. But our ESCO has to expand in the next year or 2. So most of them around the table are one of the candidates, and they don't know they're in a competition. But this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. So you start with leadership, you start with, you also make sure that you're intentional, you have the right kind of policies that enable women to excel, and then you now take it to the board level. When you get to the board level, you encourage others. What I see, as what other speakers say, is that we seem to continue to recycle the same number of women on boards. And so it also is a responsibility of us not only to build our own our immediate ecosystem, but to work with the Society of Corporate Governance, where I also serve as a director, and other organizations to encourage young women to be a little bit more ambitious and be board prepared. Now, it's not just because you're a manager in your organization that you're board prepared. You have to understand the importance of corporate governance. What is the fiduciary responsibility? What is your social responsibility? What is the ethical or moral compass that is required of you as a woman on the board? You can see my sister here, Mary. And that role that you play is so vital. And I think that's really where it all starts and stops. That we must be able to inculcate the new generation of women board ready women. And that is not just having women in their 40s and their 50s, but if over 70% of our population is under 30, we need to have women leaders in their 30s, in their 20s. And it means that some of us have to think about our daughters, and I must say that we all try our best, but we must encourage our daughters to do certain things, to volunteer their time in NGOs, to start NGOs, even while they're at work. And these are the kind of things that helps and prepares them, that people see what you do, and you form your own network of a potential board member for an NGO. Start with small things, an advisory board, and so on and so forth. Finally, I think we can also not talk about boards without knowing that 90% of businesses in Nigeria are MSMEs, and they don't even have a board in the first place. So we also have to encourage proper corporate governance in society. Most of these SMEs are run by women, so we need to encourage them to be more bankable, to be able to be more scalable, and then be able to have the importance of an advisory board, a full board, and ensure that we get those principles of 40% minimum women representation on the board as we go along. It's a destination that we as women must push the narrative, but we mustn't do this alone. We need the male folk. So it's a pity today that we have a handful of men. I mean,
we have
our
quite some
guest
men
speaker.
online, so that's
Yes.
a good thing as well.
But I think one of the things I really encourage is that going forward, women need to invite more men to the table when we're talking about these issues. Because we need cheerleaders. We need people who will be there, he for she's, that when decisions are being made, that you'll be there to be able to help us to push this narrative like Mr. Muzo has done earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Konjo, can you hear us now? She can hear? Excellent. Okay, so I'll just go on. So Mr. Mashe has just spoken about, the different elements to be considered to make sure that these numbers get better and would even affect the recruitment process in general. So you sit on boards, you are in you work in the private sector, you run your own business, you have a board, your business has a board, and now you're coaching young entrepreneurs. Because something we also need to think about is, if there are so many entrepreneurs, a lot of these female board members are going to be business owners. They're not going to be coming from corporates. They're business owners. So what are you doing about it? What do you see? Like, what is the mindset? Let's start from there. What is the mindset of these entrepreneurs in your experience within your network and with the people that you coach with regards to getting on boards? Because at the end of the day, you have to want it. It's one thing to seek board equity on boards, but women folk have to want it as well. And if we don't expand the pool, like we've heard here today, we're going to keep recycling the same set of women who have been approved to be board ready simply because they exist and they are present on boards already. We can't hear. Yeah, maybe she put a microphone beside the laptop. Mr. Kojo, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. Oh my, can you please send her a type in the chat that can she please hold? And once she can, we sort it out, let's get her on. Oh my, I was really hoping she was going to be able to take that question. Okay, so I'll bring it back to you, Mr. Isaac. So Mr. Onuzo, when he was talking during his address, spoke about the different things women communities can do. But the thing is, as he said it, what I kept on thinking is there must be something that we're doing wrong, because these organizations, associations, they exist. But how come he, as a board chairman, doesn't know about them beyond, just WIMBIZ? So with regards to women forming these kind of associations, or maybe optimizing the ones that have already been created, what is your advice? And please speak from a point of a mentor and a sponsor.
The few women associations like the WIMBIZ, I know them very well and I'm aware of what they do. You see, the focus right now has been on corporate board. That is only attending to a fraction of the pool. I mean, you remember in, I think Mrs. Omayase just said, the bulk of these folks are in small enterprises. And it is the small enterprises that become the Guinness of this world. That's where the attention should be. Not the Olorun should go, let's go and do the harvesting. What of the grooming? So if we want women to sit on great boards, let us turn those small enterprises of women to great companies. Then you will see them. Until we coach them, because when I teach this topic, I just talk about grooming or preparing the bride. If you want banks to be coming to your office to beg you to take money from them, there are characteristics that those companies have that brings the bank to beg them. Whereas some other companies are permanently begging their bank managers to go and bring the paper, your birth certificate for your mother. Look, but if you prepare your company and you have all the discipline of a Shell or a Mobil, you will get the banks coming to beg you. And then this woman will just appear suddenly. We need to help those SMEs to become successful enterprises. And this percentage of women that we're talking about on the board, we will have so many that will be going to collect, hey, madam, you are successful in your business, can you just come and let us your perspective from your business success? This is how, that's what I mean by there is nothing that succeeds like success. If we want to expand the scale and the scope and the pool, let's go to the SMEs and convert those SMEs to successful ventures. We have more women businesses, businessmen and women than men. but they are not becoming, they are not growing to become shell, to become mobile. If the NGOs and the advocacy groups can do some magic in that area, then the pool, the talent pool, will be really, really enlarged. That's what I would say. If this is what I tell my folks.
Well, I'm going to come back to you
All right.
On this. So you're talking about, that women should scale their businesses or not, but there already exist good businesses. So is it something that maybe men can stretch out their hands? Because I think sometimes what happens is, and this is me, I'm talking as a business owner myself,
Okay.
is that sometimes you don't even feel welcome. Oh. Sometimes even just to pitch as a business owner, you're immediately looked at as in, you're only women. There was actually an experience I had, and then we were like 3 women, and then they said, do you employ only women in your company? So even in the first 5 minutes of being in that room, we weren't made to feel welcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I think, yes, there can be magic that can be done, but what can men do in the area of, I think specifically, mentorship and sponsorship? Do we do it like Professor Konido advised? You have policies, organizations, and the women ourselves. So policies, everybody plays a role in that. But organizations with the leaky pipeline, the glass ceilings, and the glass walls, there are more men in leadership positions. What can you do? I feel like I almost want to direct this question at Mr. Onusa as well, but we'll come to him in Q&A.
Well, for me, as an individual, I am very deliberate when it comes, because I already know these challenges are all over the place. There's cultural problem. I've seen that many times. I'll give you an example. There was aptitude test. We were looking for sales professionals. And I look at the results of the test, and a woman came first. And then interview were done, and she disappeared from the candidate list. How can somebody who scored 75 disappear, and those who scored 55 are now being, considered on the final list? So I asked the question, what happened to that person who scored 75? Who said she just gave birth to twins last week. And so she was removed.
She was removed or she dropped out?
She was removed from the list by a committee of some so-called experts. And there's a woman in that committee. And I said, but why did you remove her? I said, why would she have the time and the energy for the job? And I said, okay, is her phone number on the application, on the CV? The phone number is there, so put it on speaker. Call the woman. Before you remove her, let us find out from her. He said, sir, did I pass? I said, you passed. But we were afraid that your twins will not let you work. He said, what? My mother-in-law is here. My mom is here. Everybody is here. I'm ready to start work on Monday. Now, if people don't go and ask, you won't know. These prejudices are all over the place. Those of us in leadership, we must take special time, special effort to uncover and to remove some of this. Look, I'll tell you, she was the best salesperson that I had that year. I made so much money from this woman. Even when I left, I retired as MD, she still goes out of her way to come and give me business in the new enterprise. It is stupid people that surround themselves with stupid people. When you aggregate smart people, smart women, smart men to work for you, you will succeed. But when you use culture, religion, ethnicity, prejudice, and you surround yourself with this kind of fellas, you are going to be in trouble. But as long as you have smart people working for you, you will shine. And they abound in all the sexes. This cultural challenge is a big thing. Not just that men should welcome you. Believe me, the women group needs to educate the men. This is ignorance big time. You see successful people completely ignorant. So as we are training the women to rise up, we also need to train the women. In fact, what I used to tell in my class nowadays, there's so many successful girls doing MBA who are rising in their companies. I've done marriage counseling. A young man came to me. My girlfriend is 3 years older than me. She's an executive director. Don't you think I'm going to have problems if I marry such a person? Now, we are used to marrying unsuccessful women. Who we do like this when we are talking. Now, how can successful women find husband when the men and the young boys are not trained to manage successful women? So, as you are training yourself, there is a lot of training that even the men requires. We need it. So, it's not just about coaching. we need to remove the prejudice, the inferiority complexes in order for us to embrace the successful women. That's some of the reason why they don't call you to the board. They're afraid that all their weaknesses will be exposed.
Mr. Isaac, you might not know it, but you're my new best friend.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Okonjo, please go ahead, please. Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. There seems to be a lag, but if you can hear.
Can hear. We can hear.
Also, what Claire was referring to. There's been a lot of conversation. I'm hearing the feedback quite a bit.
Please go ahead. We can hear you all right.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, those online can hear me. I just want to make sure that those in the audience can also hear me. Here. I want to take this a little bit further, just talking about the women themselves, the female actually taking the responsibility to show up at these tables. I like the fact that we've referred to tables that are being created by women. I mean, Claire Omashe is sitting here. She owns her business. Bella Ikeme owns businesses. And there's a sense in which all our focus is on these corporate boards. And that's great because obviously they're regulated. They're at the top of the value chain, as it were. However, I dare say we should begin to actually bet on the businesses that are growing and actually help them to build that capacity. So that's on the one side. On the other hand is the fact that, women also need to have the audacity to ask. Men are not bashful about asking for opportunities. We need to encourage more female leaders to stop the preparation and begin to actually ask for the opportunities. When we were listening to Mr. Onuso, he talked about what the qualities, of people attributes for being on the board. And quite a lot of those, in addition to what Professor Kunedu referred to, are things that, women are very natural at. Opportunity spotting, being able to look ahead into the future, being strategic and all of that. So let's move from the focus on soft skills, which are important and critical, but actually, female leaders are also strategic, and we need to start demonstrating that strategic aspect of our leadership by actually stepping up and asking to be at the table and asking to be heard. I was reading a book, and I'm going to recommend this to any woman who is here today. It's a book by Dambisa Moyo, and the book is How Boards Work. One of the things that Dambisa wrote in her book was that actually, because she's an expert and she began to put herself forward, her expertise, her knowledge, her experience, she wrote books and she wrote articles and she got into the right rooms. So when we talk about these places where there are not enough women, here's what I like to say, that actually men are not excluding women. What it is that we're used to inviting people who see around us, people who we connect with, people who we do business with. The person who writes the check makes decisions. So we need to start focusing on building more tables by more women, and those who are building tables in other ways, because you can build tables through leveraging your authority, your expertise, and demonstrating leadership and being in the right spaces. So the network matters. You speaking up matters. You connecting with the right parties and actually asking, having the boldness to ask. Women need to ask more often than we're doing currently. Women need to also stop over preparing. I like to say, if you have to prove a point, you've missed the point. Many times, even when women get into those roles, there's a sense in which, because we've come from, in a sense, a position where sometimes it's a quota, there's a sense of inferiority complex, or there's a sense of we need to then prove that we deserve to be here. No, you don't need to prove anything. You just need to show up in your authentic leadership power. And by doing that, you're actually laying a good table for the men in the room to see that actually, not only do you deserve to be here, you're actually a significant part of the table. If we're not at the table, we cannot contribute to the men. The more businesses that women build with the mindset of scaling, with the mindset of getting these businesses listed, then the more women will see at those tables. Because the people who create the table determine who sits at the table. So I want to leave this challenge One is that women need to be more audacious. Maybe we don't like the audacious will do. Maybe we need to start thinking bigger. We need to ask bolder. And when we sit at the table, let us sit more confidently. The more confidently we sit, the more we give the permission to other women who are watching to actually feel that, right, this table is for me. I can be at that table. I don't need to be a technical guru to sit at a table. There are things that boards are looking for. They're looking for strategy. They're looking for insight. They're looking for resilience. Any woman who's had a baby is resilient. Any woman who manages families and in-laws and society and all the qualifications that we go, you are resilient. And so how do we take the experience that we have that is not being couched in a technical language and actually convert them to the currency that business understands so that they can see our value much more? And I believe that leadership development, helping more women feel more confident about their about the experiences, is something that we can do to help expand this. If we're going to wait for the men to give us the handshake or to invite us, we're going to wait for 200 years based on the research. I also agree that the men need to be educated. And that's why when we have these types of sessions, we should not just invite women, we should actively invite men. I invited a few men. I can see Michael in the audience online and a few other men. And it's important that we continue to engage with the men, because as one of the speakers said, we have a world of 50% women, 50% men. And actually, it's a big loss if we're not at those tables. So let's create the tables. Let's be comfortable at the tables. Let's be audacious about sitting at those tables. And let's stop waiting to be prepared. Let's stop all those qualifications. My last point, and then I will yield the floor, Bella, is there was a question about, there was a conversation around networks and about women who experience forming essentially masterminds so that they can champion each other. I think that is a very valuable suggestion and recommendation. I want to add on top of that we need to be mindful to not just be in the space where there are only women who are all seeking the same things, and then we create almost that narrative of competition. Whereas they're actually men that you can pull into those masterminds, into those spaces to be both allies, sponsors, cheerleaders, but actually collaborators in this process. And we also need to be comfortable being in spaces where we're uncomfortable, spaces where we're the only ones, okay? Because by doing that, by being courageous, we're then able to bring other people into the room. I'll stop there, and I hope that you actually heard me. And I'm
yes, we heard you. We heard you.
Thank you, Bella.
The only thing that comes to mind, I feel like saying, is hallelujah. Okay, I know Irene has to leave us. So if she's still here, we'll take her parting note so we can go into Q&A. Is she still here? Oh, she's left. She had a heart stop. Oh, she's unable to connect anymore. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, she can please just put it in the chat, and we'll get a way to get it across to the audience. Okay, so that has been quite a lot. So I think we'll go into the Q&A now. And we have a couple of questions from the audience online. But I think before then, I don't know, Mr. Nuzo, you keep looking at your watch. Do you need to leave? Okay, you're good. Okay. All right. So one of the questions says, what deliberate efforts are current women on the board doing to pull other women up to their board and other boards as well? Can other women on the board relinquish other nominations they have for other companies to other women? I'm not sure how this works, but I think this question has been spoken to quite a bit. But Mr. Mashi, I think you took it. If you just in 1 minute, just reiterate, just in case this person missed. Okay, fantastic. Another question says, citing the reasons why the pyramid becomes narrow at the top when all the desired requirements are present and met by these females, is the issue of inability of many women to take the risk of sleeping with the cabals of such institutions or boards. Kindly help more on this observation. I'm going to answer this immediately. We will not engage with these kind of boards, but I think Bingwe, you're still in corporate, so please, you'll take on that question, even though we're hoping that we have ethical boards that women are going to be attracting and be attracted to. Okay, so I want to take online before, no, definitely, I mean, you're here in the room. I just wanted to, okay, so Eno Abasi Ura says, I'm concerned about the issue of smart women dropping off on account of raising a family. Family is critical for human sustainability. I strongly believe that the workplace should find innovative ways for women to have both career and family without losing credibility. This has been spoken to a bit in the past, but Mr. Isaac, I love the way you take this question, so please, we'll give you a minute to take that. Peace Anomeze says, okay, this is just a suggestion. She says, sometimes the gaps are caused by lack of expertise, no knowledge of market trends and new policies. Women, let's equip ourselves, believe in ourselves, and be very productive. And then, okay, this is a big question. Please listen. According to certain surveys and research that has been carried out, it has been submitted that men and women usually start off at the same level. However, when it starts to get towards senior managerial positions, the dynamics change and more men get to that level faster and more than the women. One of the reasons that has been cited is that women might not be as ambitious. And this lack of ambition is viewed by the executive as a sign that they do not want to progress beyond a certain level. How true do you think this is in terms of the corporate sector in Nigeria? Adeolu, please, you'll take that. Also, the lack of mentors has been identified as a reason why women are not climbing up the workforce. Based on the studies carried out by O2 Telecom and CIPD, one of the barriers identified as holding women back from career was not knowing how to network with influential people. It was further submitted that the research carried out indicated that most women felt it was important for them to get individualized support, either from a mentor, coach, or official sponsor. Do you think the lack of mentorship is a possible reason for the lack of diversity on the board? So to this question, I will say lack of mentorship and sponsorship. Mr. Nuzo, please, you will take this question. And then please, ma'am, please go ahead.
I'll be very fast. My name is Olukemi Onabanjo. My background is HR in a lot of industries. We have a lot of evaluation of efficiency at board level, like KPMG has said. But we really never have an evaluation of the strength and quality of the board-ready female succession plan, as in the number of people who are supposed to step into that level. I was in HR many years, and I was involved in a lot of these board evaluations, but right now, sitting on the other side, I really can't remember somebody asking me, how many people do you have ready? What training can we provide for them? Claire, thank you for, it's fantastic that all your ladies are here. If I'm supposed to evaluate right now the board readiness talent succession plan of your company, I will be able to do it spot on. Companies need to run board-ready courses with organizations like SCGN, IOD, WIMBIS for their senior executive. What WIMBIS does, they have what you call WIMBOard. It's different from the regular ones they do. And the WIMBOard is the one that attracts board-ready and trains them, and they're supposed to have a database so that if organizations want, they can tap into this database. In that wise, too, SCGN needs to have an updated database of private and public sector, and he also mentioned the one-man business. And so the question I want to ask for KPMG, do you have a hand-holding program for new board members, like watching a new board member, the in-meeting dynamics with the new board member, like an assessment center kind of, and the CEO? Do you have an executive coaching plan for them to give them feedback? This is how you did in your first year as a board member. And finally, the last question would have been for Enase. She says a chairman is supposed to be like a music conductor. Who would protect a female board member where you have a chairman who is hands-on, who is not a music conductor kind of chairman, and who really does not really understand this gender, there has to be so many females on the board. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, please go ahead. We're going to stop at 10 questions, please, so we're sure we have enough time to do justice.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mary Akpoboma. I work in the financial sector, have worked all my life, so I understand what we mean by women starting off at certain levels, and then we get to middle to senior management, and we begin to taper. Couple of questions. Some may be answered in this room, some may just be food for thought. One, who has the data of the number of women on boards 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year? Because I believe that International Women's Day, last year's celebrations, was also centered around the same sort of discussions we're having today. It will be centered around it again next year and the next year. So who has the data that would tell us that in this sector, in that sector, these are the number of women that are in the C-suite or at a certain high level? That way, when we gather again next year, somebody would say, oh, there has been an improvement, which implies that this session is useful. That is one. Two, for companies who say, we got on board a certain number of women, and after X number year or two, a couple of them dropped off, and they were replaced by men. Why should they be replaced by men? If companies are deliberate, and I stress that word, that X number of percentage, in this case, I think we hear things around 30%, 35% affirmation, and things like that. If we're deliberate about it, and that is what we intend to do as a company, if a female leaves the board, we will replace that female with a female. We will not replace that female with a male. There are more than enough women out there to take on those roles. So there's really no reason why we should therefore be replacing the female that has left with a male. We talk about board readiness for women. Who's putting together board readiness for men? I don't hear things like there is board readiness for men. So I think that there is just such this standard that we have set that a woman just must attain before she can. Udo mentioned it. Why do we have to be over-prepared? Are the men, quite frankly, are they that prepared? I don't think so. I challenge women, which is why I'm very particular about the data, please. And if nobody's thinking about it, KPMG, whoever, can just take it on. Seriously. I challenge whatever company that is going to take this on and can tell us over the next, let's say, 6 months, that we've done this survey. These are the number of women. This is the percentage. We are therefore challenging the companies in those respective sectors that next year we want this addition, and that addition. And lastly, I challenge women to emulate Claire and what she has done in her company. When I see some of the boards and it is male-dominated, well, the chairman is male, the CEO is male, okay, it's okay. But when I see boards that the CEO is female, and she stands in the middle when they're taking a photograph, and to her left are 3 men, to her right are 3 men, I'm wondering, what are we talking about? So if the success, so we need to beget some more success like Claire has done in her company, that as I stand here today as a woman, if I incorporate a company tomorrow and I have a 10-man board, look at it very well. It will most likely be a 7-woman board and 3 men. It would not be men surrounding me, because again, as a woman who owns that company, you're making a massive statement when you are also then surrounding yourself with men. So really, the data, so that next year we will be able to say we have arrived. And maybe just lastly, just very heart-wrenching. that today's Senate, number of women in the Senate has dropped by 11. And here we were thinking, oh, we're getting there. And we have dropped, we were 5% when we were about 13. If we have dropped by 11, then what percentage are we? It's still quite a long way to go. Thank you.
There is still work to be done. Okay, I'm going to take your question, but Ms. Netima is off to a board meeting, but she's here with us, so we'll take her last remarks so that we can wave her a cherry goodbye. Oh, we've lost her again. Oh. Okay, please go ahead. And this, okay, we'll take just these two questions so we can do justice to those that have been asked.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Umahani. I'm a legal practitioner, and I am from the northeast of Nigeria. This is very important to this conversation. I've heard women and men talk about opportunities for women. Where I come from, we don't even get that opportunity. For starters, for you to even go to school. So if you're going to school, it means you're being rebellious. I've been to a courtroom where the judge asked me at one time, where are you from? I said, I'm from Maiduguri. And he said, what are you doing in my courtroom? And I said, I beg your pardon. He said, oh, I'm really sorry that I had to ask you that. And off the courtroom, he said to me, women from, he was saying it jokingly, but I took it really personal. He said, women from your place do not go to school. Because he asked, what part of Maiduguri? I said, I'm sure Arab. He said, women from your place do not go to school. All they do is wear jewelries, go for weddings, funerals, and, you know, wear the best wraps around. I felt a bit insulted, but then it's true. You know, truths are very hard to hear, but they're quite true. So what I'm trying to say is that women are the ones that are creating these leaking pipes. I go to my mother and she would ask me, what in God's name are you doing? Going to school, trying to own a business by yourself. Why are you not married with children and, you know, enjoying yourself like your cousins are? You know, so we need to create that value chain for our younger women. We need to inform them that you can actually be this and that and that. I am on many boards, and sometimes, most of them, I am the only woman. I'll go to a room, I'll be the only woman that will be speaking. And if you don't, like speakers had rightly said, sometimes a woman, your decisions do not count. They look at you as being, oh, too open, too forward, too that. So I feel that women should come together and close that gap. You know, the leaking pipes should be shut down and encourage more women to be able to go towards that. But it needs to start from the grassroots. That's what I mean.
Thank you so much. That was so emotional. Thank you. Thank you. Last question, and then we'll start taking answers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much to the organizers, the moderator, panelists, and the speakers, and all the participants. Really great conversation so far. My name is Busola Alofe. I'm the Media Past Registrar and CEO of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM, and I currently run my own consulting firm. A comment and a question. So when our chairman, Mr. Onuzo, was mentioning the attributes of a board-ready female, just like the lady over there said, what came to mind is how come this is sounding like it needs to be different from what a man requires to meet up to. And essentially, I do believe that with equity, it means whatever the job requires is what a woman and a man are required to meet up to. So it should simply be standards of board readiness. And whoever the candidate is that gets that is the person that gets the job. Of course, there's work we're doing to make sure that gender representation, female representation strengthens, and so we'll be doing a lot of things around that. But I don't think we should couch the narrative in the sense of this is what board-ready females require, because I think that has probably some unintended consequences. Thanks a lot. The question, because something I haven't heard is about corporate politics as a deterrent. So I worked in some of the largest companies in the world, and whether I was abroad or I was in Nigeria, part of the responsibilities was kind of resourcing some of the most senior positions across the world and looking for the right fit candidates. And I would talk with women and men sometimes, and I would ask, there's this job, I've looked at your profile, you can do this. And they'll just say, Busola, you know what, just leave me alone. I don't want to get into those higher altitudes. I can't deal with corporate politics. And I'm actually kind of that kind of a person, So the question is, how can we prepare, particularly we're talking about female board-ready candidates, to understand what corporate politics is, what it is not, the value of it, and how to play without stepping on minefields. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start from the last question because it's still fresh, and then because we might need to repeat some of the questions that have been taken. So Adeolu, you have played corporate politics. I mean, you were you were MD CEO at Allianz, so you understand corporate politics all too well. So to her question about playing corporate politics, is it an absolute, I'm going to couch it a bit, is it an absolute requirement to know how to play politics, or is there a way you can not be such a good player and maybe learn on the job or be better prepared, even though it doesn't come naturally, and of course from your experience?
Yeah, corporate politics is an interesting one and a tough one, and there's no easy solution to your question, which is why this question comes up quite often. I worked for Allianz for over a decade in 4 different countries. Allianz, if you don't know, is a German multinational, one, if not the largest financial services company in the world. And I started in the head office, which the head office or headquarters tends to be the most political, and the same at Allianz is the most political of all the various subsidiaries. My superpower was always diplomacy. So I don't like to play games. That's just not me. I'm not going to say one thing and then do another. I'm very much a fan of bosses who just tell me how it is. I've had 2 Dutch bosses, and I love the Dutch because they just speak their mind. They don't care. And one of my boss while I was in, or one of my bosses while I was in Munich, one of the Dutch guys, a big mentor, a big sponsor of mine. He said to me that, oh, you're like a waterfall. You always get what you want, but you're always going like this, and somehow you get there. But sometimes you just need to, that takes time. Sometimes you need to just go straight. And I returned with saying that, well, you're a bulldozer. You just knock everyone out of your way, and that's also not always the right way to do things. So and that's the truth, right? If you work in a big corporation, on one hand, you can't just bulldoze everyone to get what you want. You will create quite a reputation. There'll be some people who will love you, but there'll be a lot of people who will hate you. And those haters, you just need a couple haters to really put some stones in your path. But of course, in a large corporation with all the bureaucracy you have to deal with, you can't always just take the diplomatic path. Although I would argue, maybe biased, but I would argue that diplomacy carries you a lot further in a large corporation, especially maybe as a woman. So men, let's just be honest, can get away with a lot of things that we can't in the way they act and in the way they speak. And there's some expectations that society has placed on us as women, that we're expected to be always kind and smiley and try to make everyone feel better. And when we're not, then we're considered a witch or something else. But you can lean into that. And if you still get what you want at the end of the day, then yes, maybe it took a little bit more time and you had to swallow a bit more your words and you had to think a bit more about what you said. But at the end of the day, it's the outcome that counts in a corporation.
Thank you so much, Adeolu. And then something I'll add to that is, there's a saying I heard a long time ago, there's politics even in your pot of soup. So if you're going to achieve a certain level of leadership, you just have to learn how to play it in some way, shape, or form. So Mashe, so the question about what women are doing from online participants.
Okay, so thanks very much for those brilliant questions. I think we could start a whole new panel session with them. But brilliant questions. Just to answer a couple that spoke specifically about what are women doing and can we relinquish our roles? And then to my sister, our learned lady from the Northeast, I will also like to make a comment there. So in terms of being deliberate, I think one of the things we need to know is that we need to have policies, we need to have policies that are sustainable. We have to have decisions that are made that transcend you sitting at the board table. So that starts with good governance practices. It starts with your board charter. It starts with the policies of the organization. It starts with the committees, the various committees and the board charters. Once you put things in writing and the board deliberates on it, you can't overnight change board decisions. It's not as easy. It's harder to make them. It's easier, it's harder to, it's hard to make them. It's even harder to change certain things. So for example, one particular board, the Development Bank of Nigeria, I've been on the board for 6 years. I'll be stepping down first quarter of next year. And of course, I was the only female independent. I still am the only female independent. I did my best to get a second independent, but I'm happy we have an executive director who's female. So definitely you can be rest assured that there's no way I will lead the organization without making sure that the INEDs will have a proper quota for diversity. And I say diversity because for me, it's not just about female. It's about diversity being both female, about young, and other things. You know, the parts of the country you're from, you also don't want to over-skew everybody from one particular part of the country because we must represent all stakeholders. So diversity is something that we must inculcate and put into policy. So if you don't have board charters, get board charters. If you don't have committees, make sure you start to form committees. And remember, every organization is at a different level of maturity. We're not speaking only about the blue chips. We're also speaking about the growing businesses that are going from mom and pop shops to medium size to national corporates, and from corporates into major, big corporates. So that's the first thing, having policies and having your framework. Second is to make sure that you influence your ecosystem. So you must be an advocate to your regulators, to put where you are regulated, to go from a code that says it is advisable or we recommend to you shall. So we do need to have, I don't particularly like to be represented on the board as a token. In fact, there are a couple of boards I've been invited to and I asked you why, you said you want a woman. Is that the only criteria? Then I'm sorry, I won't serve. Okay, because obviously you're not going to be able to function in that board. Your value, whatever it is that you're going to do is not going to be evaluated. So please go where you can make an impact. And having quota systems can help. And you can see in the banking system, if we look at what's happened in banking over the last 3 decades, the number of non-performing loans has gone down. The amount of riskiness in banks, insider trading has gone down to a very low level. And I dare say that the amount of the in-depth decision-making at the level of the board on risk, we have 3 chairmen of banks. A few years ago, we had 4 chairmen of banks that were female. Most of the major committees like BNGC, the Board Nomination and Governance Committee, are chaired by women. Some of us chair the Ethics Committee in the Development Bank of Nigeria. I chair the Ethics Committee. That comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot. Because every time they make a decision, say, what does Claire say? That's okay, I like that. So they see me not as the girl in the room, but somebody that's holding a moral compass, somebody that's holding a higher set, not to say higher set of values, but holding everybody to a very high level of expectation of this board. And every decision that we're making must be in the best interest for everybody and all stakeholders. And then finally, I think it goes to the board evaluation, as you said, that we need to utilize board evaluations slightly different. I know the Society of Corporate Governance, Chairman and her team do a brilliant job at board evaluations. For those of you online that don't do board evaluations, I would encourage you to do so. And then a challenge for us at the society is how do we help our organizations that we do the board evaluation get more board-ready women? How do we make sure we have a better representation of women on the boards? And how do we, as Mary said, start to do the analytics of where we are and where we should be and be the think tank, the monitoring and evaluation tool to ensure that we can do that. I know with the likes of of FutureSoft and others that we have here, we will be able to find a solution to using data, analyzing the data, and showing also correlating financial data of these companies with the representation of the board. Finally, to round up, should women relinquish their positions when they're not there? I don't think so. You should never give up. You're there representing yourself and all of us. So don't give up. But make sure that when you leave, that there's succession that will guarantee another woman to be in your place and more women to be in place. And finally, to our sister from the Northeast, I feel your pain. Naji Hausa kadang kadang. Kisa Naji Makaranta Zaria. Aha. But that also shows that nobody should look at anybody and be prejudiced. So that's the point I'm making. You are Kanuri, and I'm telling you why I'm saying so. You're probably Kanuri, are you? Sorry. Shua Arab, sorry. I just came back from Maiduguri last week. We had the privilege of opening a new cancer center there. My first challenge is I was the only woman in the crowd on every picture, in a very bright suit, by the way, okay? I was the only woman there. And after a while, I had to ask the man, where are the women in this teaching hospital? There must be female doctors. So why am I saying what I'm saying? That yesterday, again in the company, we had our own International Women's Day, and our speaker, Ndidi Weleni, challenged us that it's not just about organizing International Women's Day, but what are we as pace setters or solution providers in the healthcare industry, what are we doing to make sure there's equity in healthcare, in leadership positions? And it was a challenge that, honestly, never did I think that that's also our responsibility. So, as you are coming from the Northeast, I understand your pain. I went to school in Zaria at some stage, and I know, the number of senior lecturers that are female are very few. And by the time you rise to the top, how many VCs do we have in the country? We celebrated the late Professor Alele Williams. We celebrate her all the time, but how many other professors do we have that are rising to the top? And this is amongst the polity. Now, when we go to the Northeast and Northwest, it's even worse. So there's a deliberate effort that needs to be made in certain parts of the country to get that representation. And those of you that have voice, you need to have wind in your sails. And I hope that by partnering with the Society of Corporate Governance, with IWOW, with ALIWA, Mrs. Amina Ayagbola has a fantastic program. There's so many different women doing things to bring up other women, that whatever they can do to partner with you to do things. So you also have a responsibility, leaving this room, to lift up other women from the Northeast. And I do hope that kind of takes us to higher ground and gives us a bit of moral compass of lifting women. Because without women, the world will not be the same.
Essentially, you've taken your last comments.
Thank you. Women supporting women. I think that's very important. Can you hear me? I'm not sure this is working. Yes, better now. Okay, so let me start with the first question concerning losing one's self-esteem whilst, progressing in your career. I mean, I can tell you for sure that didn't happen to me. And a whole lot, happens in environments as we project ourselves. I look at everybody here. We're all beautiful women, right? But the way we project ourselves is not as though we are cheap women. Women that can be taken for granted, or women that must be slept with before they progress. So if anybody's going through that, certainly there has to be some sort of a report. You must speak up. You must speak against such a culture. And if that is the culture in such an organization, you must then definitely know that's not the place for you. For me, when you may not be able to change an entire organization, but you must speak up. And as women, there's no shame in being able to say things like this. We should be bold enough to say, this is what is happening here. This is what has been requested of me. I don't want to do it. I want to stay here in this organization. If we are bold enough to do things like this, we can change, we can make a change. And if there's not going to be any change, last resort is to then look for alternatives. And I can assure you, listening to a whole lot of people here, there are other organizations that we can work with. So thank you, ma'am. I think you're Mary, if I got that right. I think it's a good challenge that you've given us, and I think I'm going to take that on board. Some sort of data to show how we've progressed over time in Nigeria in particularly, considering the major organizations and even those small and medium-sized enterprise. Succession planning. We do have that as part of our board evaluation process, where we also do some peer appraisals, and we do give feedbacks to directors, whether they are new or they're existing. So part of what we do is to ask them to self-evaluate themselves. We also ask their fellow board members to evaluate them, and we also take a look from the interviews that we conduct. We'll tell them what it is that we see. And we actually come up with a report, for each director where they can see how they've performed. Some sort of rating as well is given, and those developmental areas they can work on. I think that's something we do. You did also ask about readiness programs for females. I think the lady over there and Mary as well has spoken to the fact that maybe it's for everybody, not specifically for females. Yes, and we do have such programs as well as KPMG. We have director training programs that are available for anybody that wants to join. We do have organizations that come to us to come and actually provide this training programs for them, and these are all available. It is I don't know how long ago you've been in that corporate world, but things have changed over time. It's very possible that then things were rather slow, but I mean, when we look at current practices, their programs, their board evaluation exercises have changed, is evolved. What we do right now is more intense because we do have interviews, even with directors. And the feedback system that we have is actually very good for them. They actually find it more, enriching, that they can get this sort of one-on-one feedback that we give. Just checking. Corporate politics. I would love to speak to corporate politics.
In 2 sentences.
In 2 sentences, please. Now, the reality is that you want to grow in an organization, and you must learn how to play the game. It may not be the way, it may be with diplomacy, but you must actually learn how to play the game. The truth about it is you need an influencer, you need a coach. Whatever name you want to give it, mentor, there should be somebody sponsoring you. And I can say, honestly, that for me, I had males actually who supported me in my career. Interestingly, a lot of males actually did stand up to say, yes, she's going to make partner, she's going to do well, she's going to actually, really be my sponsor. And for me, I think you really do need to actually find out who those people are, those people that are promoting you, singing your praises, who are those that have worked with you and are ready to support you to grow in your career. Women supporting women. I must give it to her. I mean, she's actually spoken a lot about us doing these things together. One more comment. I think this is where there's still a lot of work to be done by women. I find it a little bit strange that women are not still promoting ourselves as much as we need to. I heard, when I was looking at the results of the presidential election, and I noticed that there was a woman who actually did contest, for the presidential post. And that was a shock because I had no idea. Maybe it's me. And I felt that there was no way, there was nothing, whether in the media or by women group that spoke about this woman who is actually on the ballot. I'm not saying we should be partisan, but actually promote that person. Even if we know she's not going to win, promote her, let us know who she is. And I think that's what these women groups that we've all spoken about need to do. Speak more about the achievements of women and actually promote our women folk, much more. Thank you
so much. Thank you, Bebe. And that was your last shot. Mr. Nuzo, will sponsorship and mentorship help in putting more women on boards?
Thank you very much. Before I speak on the sponsorship and mentoring, let me also say that female board getting females ready for the board is not just for females. We're not stereotyping them. It's because this is a female program, and this was specific for this program. I mean, the same goes. If you look at the characteristics and the requirements, they're cut across male and female. And I believe that's the way it should be understood. Now, let's look at, again, the issue of sponsorship. Yes, Now, we also have to be careful while we're discussing this, in the sense that sometimes you may mean well, it may be misunderstood. For the board, I don't have any issues really, because, I mean, it's clear that members of the board, not too many, they know themselves, and mentoring is pretty easier, with that. But when you then talk of the organization, I would, first of all, say that, yes, as much as possible, there must be what I call match mentoring. And what I mean by that is this. It should just, it should be more of an organizational issue than just somebody requesting or requiring a mentor. I'm saying that because of the sensitivities, because it is easy to misunderstand people, to misunderstand intentions. Again, I would like to talk about those who require to be mentored, particularly the women. They must also be clear as to what they really want. Because somebody can hide under the cloak of looking for a mentor when she probably has something else in mind. I'm not castigating, but I'm really saying what is, could happen, or the realities we do find. And that's why I'm saying that in mentoring, it should go beyond just the individuals. And big organizations and good organizations have ways of really raising mentors, especially for those they believe that high flyers and will really make it. They encourage and they try to support as well. Now, again, I would like to say that the same goes for not just mentoring and coaching. There must also be clear-cut process of management development or development of people that takes, cognizance of the fact that these people need coaching and development, and target that, training or the development towards achieving that as well. Finally, I would like to say that it is in the interest of not just the individual, but the organization to identify the high flyers. Make sure that they find or they provide coaches for them, time-bound and targeting, to what the organization really needs in terms of what do they want for that fellow, what position, would the organization want the person to take, and tailor it in such a way that by the time that has been set, the fellow is ready to take up that responsibility. I don't know, is there any other question?
No, you've covered everything. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much. And because of time, we'll take that as your last thoughts. My new best friend, Mr. Isaac, your last thoughts, please, on the matter. Your question has been covered in some way, shape, or form.
No,
you can speak to it in your last.
No, I'm going to answer my question and then do my last thought. The question was, how do organizations support women who are trying to raise family? That was the question you wanted me to attend, which I've talked about before. It's two parts. What should the company do? And what should you, as an individual or as families, do? Companies can only do maybe 10 or 20% of it. The real responsibility is always to you. Now, we all work in companies, and we want our companies to be great, and we want great practices. God is not coming from heaven to institutionalize great practices. It's up to you to stand up, to lobby, to send memo, to create great practices in your enterprise. You want a crèche? Why not? You need to speak about it. Your MD may not know what a crèche is. You want to close early or resume early? All these things can be challenged. Why should all of us resume at 8 o'clock? Everywhere I go, that's the first question I ask. Some people need to come at 9 or 10. Let them come at 10. Some people should get to work at 8. Avoid all the traffic, get to work at 7, and close at 3:30 or 4. This is where what we do in Shell and Mobil. They resume early and close early. All these things can change the family situation if you begin to introduce them. The other one I've talked about is raising family is a big business. It is not something you do on the side. So if you're earning good salary, please put good salary to raising your children. Don't employ idiots as house help. Look for people who can answer phone, who can assist your children with homework as your house help, not illiterates. Support your mother-in-law, encourage them to help you. And then don't have 20 children. It's because it will disturb your career. If it's true, For me, all my kids at least 3 years older than the next. I don't want two people meeting in the university at the same time. This, yeah, it's a financial decision. Now, but it will eventually affect your personal finance. So look at your situation, craft something that will work for you. That's all I'll say. On a final note, congratulations to all the women in this room and in the world. The world needs you. The world will not make it if 50, we cannot clap with one hand. We need to get the two sides before we can clap. So please rise up to the challenge and play your role. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Okonjo, your last comments, please, as we round off.
She's still with us.
Do we have her, or should we move on? Okay, Adeolu, your last.
So I'll address the ambition question in my last words. Lack of ambition. So what bothers me about this question, it's not the first time this has come up to me, is the habit we have of blaming women and other minority groups for the problems society has put in front of them. We can talk about nature versus nurture. I'm a big proponent of nurture. When I look at two situations, one, my father, I'm the oldest of 5 children. My father was my biggest champion since as far as I can remember. And what I've also found with other women I've spoken to is many times when they have a strong father figure who has supported them and pushed them, not just supported them, but pushed them from the beginning, they succeed. Well, however they define success, but they succeed. And so this is the nurture that comes in. There was a campaign in the US a few years back talking about throw like a girl. And it asked the question, throw like a girl to it was Dove. I wasn't sure it was Dove. Yes, it was Dove. To younger girls, to teenage girls, to women, to young women. And it was interesting to note at the age when throwing like a girl started to have a negative connotation in a girl's mind. If you would ask a 5-year-old throw like a girl, she'll throw normally. She'll throw just like she does. Because she's a girl, she'll throw. But when you ask a teenager or a woman throw like a girl, they'll start throwing like someone who doesn't know how to use a ball, or et cetera. So, and this comes from society. Why is it that the young girl doesn't believe this, but the older woman does, or the young female woman does believe it? It's society. So I don't believe there's any lack of ambition anymore in women than in men. There are unambitious men, there are unambitious women, and we don't all have to desire the same thing. That's fine. But when society puts blockers, and I'll start to close, in our way, that becomes the issue. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge proponent of women empowerment. When I came in to an all-male board, including the CEO, so I was the first woman on the board. When I took over as CEO, I made sure, they asked me for a recommendation to take over my non-exec position. I made sure that we got a woman to replace me as a woman. So now we had 2 women on the board. We had a position on the board, a third position on the board that opened up. I made sure that we had women in that pipeline, and we chose a 3rd woman on the board. So when I came into an all-male board, I left, well, including me. So I was the 3rd woman, so there were 3 out of 7 were women board members. And this is important. This goes to the intentionality that all of us have talked about here, including the ones virtually, that we need to be intentional about this. This will not happen accidentally. On a policy level, on a corporate level, for us, sphere of influence. Yes, we can lobby, we can do all these things, etc., but we also have to think about what can we do to change the narrative. And with that, I'll close.
Thank you so much. Okay, one final time, we'll try again, Ms. Okonjo. Sorry?
I hear you. So, listen, like I was saying earlier, women need to start acting like, being a director is a badge of honor. It's no different from any other leadership role, in society. Leadership is about impact, it's about influence, it's about providing guidance and direction. And so, to get ready, it's about leadership, whether you're a man or you're a woman. However, it's been said here several times that men tend to be more confident and to present themselves more confidently. And that's an area that I think is very important that women begin to pay attention to. And to add to the challenge that has been put out, we have an academy, a leadership academy for the last 3 years where we've been, as it were, coaching, mentoring, and developing female leaders to show up more confidently in society, to negotiate their way up whatever ladder they have chosen. I think it's important for us to also think in terms of authenticity for female leaders, to recognize that we're not in competition.
Okay, we really need to wrap this up. Okay, I just want to say a big thank you to the audience, those here in person and those who have joined us virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of this today. To our speakers, Professor Konedo had to leave. Mr. Onuzo, you have been nothing short of brilliant and inspiring and motivating. Thank you so much for your address and your contribution to today's event. And to the speakers, Irene Netima, you had to leave us. Mr. Okonjo, so sorry frustrated you this afternoon with the hybrid event. Mr. Olugbagbe, thank you so much. You're my new besto. I shall be looking for you at the door. Adeolu, thank you so much for your input, your contributions. Bingbe, thank you. And you've taken on a couple of things you're going to do following this. So Choma and the SCGN team, hope you'll be holding her accountable. Ms. Claire Mashiach, thank you so much. You are such an inspiring individual, and this is not just female, you're just an inspiring individual, period. So thank you so much for being you and all that you do and your contributions to society. This has been amazing. My final thoughts on this will be thank you for doing this, and let's do something with all of this information that we've received here today and transfer it and influence people within our ecosystems. That's the only way these numbers will get better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bella. Thank you so much, the speakers. I would like us to take a picture quickly. Then we have our announcement and a closing remark. Thank you so much for staying on to this time, and also our virtual audience. Thank you. I must say that we can come down. I must say that we have over 155 people online participating. So thank you so much for your patience and also your contribution. We'll take a picture now, then we'll do a closing with them. Yes. Sir, please you can join us. Where do you want us to have the picture? Okay, so here, please. Thank you so much. We just need to give you. I would like to call on our director present, Mrs. Bego. Okay, one comment. You will, sir. Mrs. Bego, please, can you join? Do you want to make it now, sir? Do you want to make a comment now? Okay.
Well, I want to thank the women sincerely for letting me come here. When I told somebody that I was invited by the women for this program, the first question is, what are you going to do? And are you sure you are safe going? Again, I'd like to also identify with our colleagues that have actually used their positions to enhance the equity of women at the board. And I want to proudly say it here that when I took over as the chairman of the board, I didn't have any woman. But in course of my time, I've been able to get 2. And 2 over 8 is 25%. So I think I've made some progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. The picture. Okay. Thank you. So, Mrs. Bego, before you leave, we have a little gift for the speaker. So you can go back. We'll just call you one at a time. Okay, I think we'll start with Bella. Bella, we'll start with you, please. Thank you so much, Bella, for moderating this session. Thank you for all the work. Thank you. Bingpe, next one. Thank you so much, KPMG, for your support. I must say that KPMG is also a corporate member of the society, and we have done a lot. Yes, we need the banner, please. Mrs. Tomashe. Mrs. Tomashe. I must say these are my directors, and if you talk about women supporting women, I have these two behind, in front, and all around me. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
That's our MD.
Thank you so much, Ms. Somashe. Yeah. The next on the list is Adeolu. Let me just make this pretty for you. If Naya, please come. Adeolu, please. Open and give to me, please. Next. Sir. Mr. Edward, our key special guest, please, can you come for the plaque? Mr. Onuzo, thank you so much, sir. Is that the last? And Mr. Isaac Orolugbagbe. He's a fellow of the society, one of our faculty at all our board trainings.
From diverse socio-economic backgrounds in order to influence their community
please, over there.
and provide stability in their career, business, and lifestyle. This is done through the W initiative.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Mrs. Bego, for this. So we have a short video from our sponsors, Access Bank and First Bank. The tech guys, if you're ready, can we shoot? Thank you. If I'm pleased, can you come up for the closing remarks and announcements? Then we can call it a day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to say welcome once again to this important event. What can I say? The board ready female. I am really impressed that our speakers did justice to the topic, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone sitting here and those listening virtually, that the speakers really motivated almost everyone in the room. Yes, I am male, but still I have something to tell my friends, my female friends, that they missed, those who attended, that yes, you got something good from this event, and those who missed it, that there is something that has been dished out here today that you cannot miss out on, and that is board readiness. Now, talking about board readiness, it spans across different points in your life. right? We are talking about, this is an event in commemoration of the International Women's Day, and we have so many women going through several things today, and this is a wake-up call to everyone. So I really want to appreciate our speakers, our panelists, our guest speakers, and I would say thank you so much because you lived up to your name today, and I'll say thank you very much. I'll take our announcements right now. We'll be having our upcoming events. On the 14th of March, we'll be having a topic on making corporate boards more effective. The topic is making corporate boards more effective. It's a virtual event. The training fee is 150,000 naira, and I'm sure we'll have so much to look out for in the making corporate boards more effective program. Just a little overview. We're talking about the enormous complexity that businesses grapple with today. Fastened regulatory environments and high public perception and scrutiny have led to aggravated pressures in the boardroom. These demands have created a type of boardroom culture that suggests board effectiveness. Boards are typically full of competent, experienced, well-intentioned people, yet it is no cliche to assert that many of the business failures found in news headlines in recent times can be traced to poor governance and decision-making. And I would like to say that this is an important training that board-ready individuals, both male and female, should not miss out on. The next event I'll be talking about is on corporate governance and sustainable value creation, which will be taking place on the 23rd of March. It's also a virtual event. Now, just a brief overview. Talking about sustainability. Sustainability is a crucial subject that businesses must focus on at all levels. Good corporate governance is essentially built on three precedents: economic progress, social development, and environmental improvements. It ultimately fosters sustainability, creates sustainable values, and helps companies achieve these values. So there is so much. This is a packaged training, and we expect that we would find them valuable. To attend these trainings, we would like you to visit our website, www.corpgovnigeria.org/2023-trainings. You see our trainings there for the year. Our training calendar is out there. So I want to say thank you very much once again. And in closing, I have this to say. Respected speakers, our keynote speaker, our guest speaker, directors seated, distinguished members of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria, our dear attendees present and those joining virtually, our partners, to mention First Bank and Access Bank PLC. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the management of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria, I want to express our sincere gratitude for gracing this important and impactful occasion and being a part of this awakening which has happened here today. As Ms. Sokon just said, women need to have the audacity to ask for their opportunities, and when they are at the table, they need to be more confident, which will give more women the will to want to be heard. Mrs. Claire Omaseye also said that we need to inculcate our board-ready females, and not just women in their 40s, but also women in their 20s and 30s, because more than half of the world population constitutes women under 30 years old. And I think this event today has been a waking call for every single person here. And I want to say in closing that I believe the inclusion of women across boards of organizations and prominent roles in the society today will be pivotal to the much needed change in the corporate world today. And also it will be a driving force in the transformation of this country and the world in general. Thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this event. Thank you very much. Also, we would like to have our video from our sponsors. We'll start with First Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was indeed a pleasure having you with us today. We have a light refreshment outside. Please, you can help yourself. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you next year, but anytime soon as well. Thank you so much.
business and lifestyle. Empowerment by focusing on women in the has empowered millions of women in Africa by availing the following offerings. The W Power Loan, a financing scheme designed to bridge the financing gaps for women in business. The Maternal Health Service Support, the MHSS, which is present in Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, and Zambia, is positioned to help women and families overcome barriers to good health and well-being. It is a social impact product and a key component of W Initiative. It is a premier product in Africa. The W Academy is designed to bridge knowledge gap through trainings, workshops, and capacity building sessions for women from all segments. One of the flagship programs designed to empower women entrepreneurs in Africa is the Womenpreneur Pitch-a-thon program, which has empowered thousands of women and provided financial grants to women across 5 African countries. As a gender-focused institution, our resolve is to continue to forge new, innovative, and visionary strategies to ensure that women are recognized at the forefront of their careers and businesses. This is how we contribute to ensuring gender equity at Access Bank. Happy International Women's Day. We are W, inspiring, connecting, empowering.
Our first branch opened in Lagos, Nigeria. And we took our place in this new land brimming with possibilities and surprises. Take Kano, for instance, where the city's wealthiest trader made his first deposit. 20 bags of silver arriving on camelback. Aren't you glad that we